and justice for all. Thank you for your patience. We were just having a little technical difficulties that have since been resolved. So we'll just jump right in and we'll start with the town administrator's report. Sean.
Good evening. Just wanted to just give the board a quick update. I have been on vacation for the last couple of weeks, but prior to that, I did have an opportunity to catch up with Mayor Nicholson and Dave Peterson from Kleinfelder to talk about Kings Beach. We have been working with Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection and Executive Office of Environmental Affairs regarding a request to expedite permitting. We drafted a letter and we sent it off to the Secretary of EOA, and we are going to request another meeting with the Secretary and again ask for them to expedite permitting associated with their recommendation to advance an outfall pipe. The mayor additionally wants to move forward and test the UV disinfection system. This is the preferred recommendation that we identified in the study that was prepared by Kleinfelder. This UV infection system, as I've shared with the board, addresses the bacteria, but doesn't address forever chemicals, doesn't address the pharmaceuticals and all sorts of other impairments that leach out of our drainage pipes. Certainly, we are concerned about those issues. Additionally, last week, the town filed our report of activities under our consent decree. Attached it to this report. It's up on our website. If you go to swampscotma.gov/public works pages and consent decree, you can find it. This details the efficacy of the millions of dollars that we have spent on IDDE. This is a program that every community that is regulated under the MS4 Stormwater Act is typically under some compliance with consent decree to address that status of good repair. We've been diligent with this and we continue to monitor construction and post-construction water quality analysis under phase 1C. As this report has recently been issued, I've asked Dave Peterson from Kleinfelder to put together a presentation that I'd like to schedule with the board sometime later in September or October to really publicly present some of the data, be available to ask or be available for questions and really a conversation about next steps. This is millions of dollars worth of Swampscott taxpayer funding. There's much work to do, not just throughout the section of Kings Beach, but Fisherman's Beach, Eisman's, and Phillips. It's a whole town. We've been really focused on Kings Beach because the consent order focuses us on Kings Beach, and frankly, much to my disappointment, in spite of our best efforts, we're no closer to seeing that beach brought back to a productive reuse than we were 6 years ago. The data just frankly continues to confound that, we have a nebulous system of pipes and interconnections and point and non-point pollution sources that impair the water quality of Kings Beach, and we need broader state and federal assistance. We intend to amplify that request and continue to press for that strategic partnership. I do think we're as close as ever to getting that type of local, state, and federal partnership, but it's going to require a few more careful conversations. That said, I'm happy to answer any of the board's questions as best I can at this point.
I'll just note that I really look forward to that next conversation. Just keep it simple for the moment. I really think we need to digest these reports and get into it. Sure. More. So
yep, it is a complicated problem that has plagued Swampscott for the last 100 years. Really pleased to report that General Andrea Gale Bennett.
Oh, hold on a second. We're still on Kings Beach. So I do agree with that, but I also want to see I want to have a full understanding of the finances around this and how we're spending money and where money is being spent. who's spending what is Lynn spending, what is Swampscott spending, and what the overall financial impact's going to be.
Happy to pull that together. All right. Moving on to Pine Street and Veterans Housing. I had an opportunity with, former deputy commander of our Swampscott Lynn disability DAB, who now has been appointed as the Undersecretary of Veterans Services for the Commonwealth. General Bennett has followed up with me and has asked to meet again, as she is absolutely very interested in bringing together a team of stakeholders that includes Nahat's Veteran Services Office, Bruce Buckley, CEO of Soldier On, is working on a project of veterans housing in another Massachusetts municipality. The number of other officials from Soldiers On, and she's looking to really get an assessment of the need and understanding of the current demand for veterans housing in Swampscott in the region, get a sense of the available resources, property identification, and partnership opportunities, and the broader vision for the project. I'm really excited to have her enthusiasm. I think she's going to be a huge, conduit for broader state and perhaps even federal VA benefits. So, opportunity for us to do something really extraordinary for veterans is really coming together. Our senior center has been busy. We have a new accredited student internship program happening this semester. We have Swampscott high school seniors that are receiving credit for interning and providing senior care. These connections to our seniors are critically important and really are best practice. Pleased to report that we've received another grant. We've received a $6,600 grant from the Executive Office of Elders Affairs through GLIS. This is a Title III project that will support multi-generation art programs that bridges the gap for cognitive barriers. There's a lot of ongoing training for dementia. We have a number of dementia training programs that are scheduled throughout the fall, and if board members haven't been part of that, we can certainly send you out an invitation. Really important for all of us to really understand the emergence of dementia. It's we're at Swampscott. Out of the 34 cities and towns in Essex County, we are the grayest or the oldest. That's good news. We're living longer, but we're living longer with loved ones that have dementia. So it's important for us to really have a profound understanding of how that affects our loved ones' ability to just deal with life in general. Really pleased that our police department has had a community forum at the Church to discuss some of the recent hate activities in town and how we are responding to those. There's more for us to do. We need to schedule an event for the fall. We need to really wrap around a broader group of stakeholders, our young citizens, and sports teams and civic groups and all sorts of folks that can be partners in how we deal with hate. We're seeing a national surge of hate. We're seeing more vitriol and more intolerance. We've got to figure this out. And the only way to do that is to pull people together and help them understand we're all in it together. I worry that, there's a lot of important conversations that are happening in small circles, and we need to broaden that circle. Very busy with some HR activities. We filled 5 part-time positions at the library. 7 positions have been filled. We filled up a couple of van drivers at the senior center. I'm pleased to report that I've issued a conditional offer for a police officer today, as we finalized our recommendations after many months of background checks and screening. We had 65 applicants, and from that entire pool, we had an individual that has been presented a conditional offer. It's a frustrating reality that is not just faced by Swampscott, but many communities. There's a lot of challenges. We are going to think anew about how we're moving forward with hiring. The timelines just don't work, and we really have some great ideas about how to expedite the timeline and really move forward to address some of those critical staffing issues.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
And help me understand the disparity of passage rates with Swampscott compared to the statewide civil service exam. The statewide average is about 70% passage rate. That could then get on a list and they just get presented to towns for acceptance, right? Which means they've gone through the process and they're ready to be hired. How is it that we're 1 out of 65 and the state passage rate on civil service is 70% on average? Okay, if you don't know the answer, I don't want conjecture. I think the question is one that we have to understand. What did we do differently? That all of a sudden only 1 out of 65 applicants is good enough for us to hire in Swampscott, but on civil service, 7 out of 10 for some reason are good enough to hire. Something is amiss with one of the two or both systems, right? So
I think,
but the facts don't lie that this is the second time we've run into
this is the most exclusive and the most impressive, standard. If we could only get 1 out of 65, I've shared.
Well, it's exclusive. It's not impressive.
Understood. Understood. And I
just want to make sure you're clear on that. I don't want you to mistake my comments as impressive. That's not impressive. That tells me something's fundamentally wrong.
Understand.
If you're in civil service, you would have had 70% of 65 applicants that you could have picked from.
Understood.
So they must all be really good, and only the good test takers and the only good applicants are going through civil service, but not. I mean, obviously that's not the case. So we've really got to quickly figure this out because something's fundamentally wrong.
I agree with Peter.
Yeah, I do too on the QuickNet. I just want to make sure more than 1 out of 65 passed the test.
That's right.
Just to be clear.
No, but understand the test is just one element. The civil service incorporates most of the things that we've done here to get to this stage, right? So I mean, it's not a direct correlation. I agree with you on that, but it's not just the test for civil service to get through. There's an assessment. There's a whole bunch of things to do. We just got to fix it.
We do. The chief and I have had long conversations about this, and I do trust that the chief has a game plan. He has presented me with a recommendation today that I'm reviewing, and I've given him authorization to move forward with a couple of different strategies. Certainly, we want to work with the union and make sure that everybody has a chance to play a role, but we do need to do something different. We cannot continue to hire police officers the same way that we have in the past. It doesn't work. It's not working locally. It's not working nationally. We've got to think anew about that. Let's see. The Attorney General has requested an extension to review Article 20 that was approved at our annual town meeting. I've authorized this. This is generally a pretty ministerial request. I expect that we'll hear back from them soon.
Can you just explain what is that? I've never even heard of that.
The Attorney General has to review all bylaws, especially zoning bylaws. And they spend a little bit of time making sure that they're consistent with state laws.
Okay.
But they have a 120-day approved period or else it's deemed approved. So they very consistently come back and ask for more time. Because if we didn't give them the time, they would probably reject it.
Okay.
Just because they need to protect themselves.
So we have to say, yes, okay, you can have
it. Fine. And last time we did that for our last zoning ones, within a week of us doing the extension, they came through with an answer.
Okay.
So it's not, I don't think, a big deal.
I have asked KP Law to draft a warrant article for either a special or an annual town meeting requiring maintenance of all seawalls in Swampscott. These are for public and private properties. I'll be working with the chair of the Conservation Commission to review the draft. I've provided the board with a copy of the draft, but I certainly am concerned about the potential of future collapses, not only at Mission on the Bay, but throughout Swampscott. I think a periodic inspection of all seawalls should be in order. There's no other community in Massachusetts that requires an inspection of seawalls, so that we would be the first, but there are communities in Florida and other states that do. So we are looking at bylaws in other jurisdictions for examples. I do think, we should, discuss this with the Conservation Commission at some point in the future. Still doing a lot of work with the Senior Center. Our health department is working with the Senior Center on climate change initiatives. We're focused on composting. Really appreciate not only Diane's work, but the work of our Senior Center and town staff on composting. We are meeting regularly and certainly discussing health effects of climate change and emergency preparedness. We are starting flu clinics. We're seeing an uptick in COVID. We want folks to just be mindful if you have health issues to really get your flu shots and just be careful. Lastly, we have our Swamptoberfest plans this Saturday. It may need to be pivoted. The weather does look a little challenging, but this will be from 4 to 8 p.m. Cost is $5 a person, $20 for a family. This is live music, food, and kids play area. These are the low cost, no cost events that actually do build community, do fight hate. There are so many things that these events do that are just not about just having a party. So get down and get to know your neighbors and have some fun. That's my report.
Hey, Sean. Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Sean, can we go, going back to the seawalls? I appreciate the seawall bylaw. It's a concept, a great idea. We're going on 90 days of that temporary seawall at Mission of the Bay, and we were told that every month there would be an engineering report submitted to the town that from the Mission of the Bay's civil engineer or structural engineer saying the wall was secure, and I don't think we've seen a single one of those reports yet. So I've just asked that you put an update on Mission on the Bay kind of on your TA. I know you've said there's been conversations with the building inspector, but we've never, I haven't seen a structural
Did we
engineer.
did we see one?
I think we saw the
report?
initial one. I think we saw the initial one for the design, of temporary.
Right.
But we haven't seen a monthly report that they're inspecting it monthly and coming back and telling us that it's still.
And who's supposed to be inspecting it?
I met with Steve Cummings this afternoon and talked to him about inspecting the seawall and getting a status report from Mission on the Bay. They're delayed. They have not submitted their plan, but I will get an update on the.
So let me just ask this question. We kind of went through this one before they opened, right? So how do we know that they're safe to open? How does the building inspector know they're safe to open? And your response 90 days ago, 65 days ago, 70, whatever it was we have a plan. They've committed to doing, or this building inspector is going to require monthly inspections, and we're going to have certifications so that we know these things. So how is that you're talking to the building inspector today and he's saying they haven't reported and you're just now coming up with a plan? Just in all seriousness. I mean, we were all concerned about it. We own a very significant property on both sides of the seawall. So we're in a butter. We're not just, municipal officials here. So I don't understand.
Know. I have to, again, I have to get an update from Steve if they've submitted those monthly reports. I haven't seen an update on that. So I'll get an update.
So if you can just put this as part of your PA report, just literally put Mission on the Bay seawall, give us an update every single meeting then on this, because I don't really want to have an update every meeting, but I just want to make sure it's being done, because my suspicion is if the temporary stuff isn't being monitored, they're not expediting their Chapter 91 approvals, which, if by way of reminder, that was an approval that DEP, when the seawall went down, DEP cited Mission on the Bay for failure to obtain state permits when they did the original construction on Mission on the Bay, which if they had gotten those permits would have been a seawall assessment. And so I want to know if they're doing that. I want to find out if in 3 years we're sitting here wondering why we're still looking at an unsafe seawall. That temporary repair is not safe. And we see police officers politely and very nicely telling kids not to climb those rocks. And humans, we like to climb rocks. So we do those things. It's totally understandable, but it's an attractive nuisance and it's just not a long-term plan. And it's certainly not if you were the property owner next door. You would certainly be uncomfortable with that plan.
Do I share those concerns?
What are the requirements for who would know if that seawall is that a civil engineer?
Marine.
Yeah, structural.
Structural engineer?
I said civil, but it could be. So whoever stamped it previously,
Right.
should be the one giving us monthly reports. It's going to cost Mission on the Bay money, but I don't care. Right? I mean, it's their responsibility. That permanent fix is going to take a while because DEP will take time on a Chapter 91 license. It takes a long time to do. And if they had done it originally, we wouldn't be here. So I'm just not very sympathetic.
Understood.
The burden should be theirs, and it seems like the burden's ours at the moment. That doesn't feel like the right place for it. So thank you.
What's Plan B? Don't do it.
The property and we'll force it. You know, they're gonna fix that one. Right now, they're.
We do it.
I mean,
We do it.
they run a business. They have to make, I'm sure they want to make a profit, so they're not going to close their business. I get it, but we are concerned with the citizens that we have going into that restaurant and our abutting property. You know, I want to make sure every person that goes in there is safe. And so I think that it's a safety concern inside and outside.
Great. There's no questions from the board.
I just, on the Swampscott police discussion, when we were talking about hiring, I just want to, what? Do I want to apply? No. No, only because I have a job that I like, so I'm going to keep it. But I understand that you're trying to make a point about the way we hired previously, but I don't want to wait 20 years of hiring this way before we decide that the way we're hiring is broken, which is what we did with civil service. So we need to be proactive, not reactive about this. And we need to be, we need to be able to pivot faster. If something isn't working, we should not be waiting 2 cycles of hiring to fix it. We should be looking at it and saying every time we make a hire, what could we have done better to get more qualified candidates, best candidates we possibly can. It should be, and even if we hired 10 police officers tomorrow, we should be asking ourselves, what could we do better to get the best folks into town on our police force? So I don't want to be having this conversation over and over and over again. I want to have some proactive steps that we're taking and then a reflection on those steps, if they worked, if they didn't work, every single time.
Katie, I think you're absolutely right. Typically, anytime we have a vacancy, we do a vacancy review. We think about the organization. We think about, what could we do? We've consolidated numerous positions and changed job descriptions. And I agree with the same thing about hiring. Unfortunately, when we do a bulk test and we have individuals pay $140 to take a test and they're to be evaluated in a pool of candidates for just a very few number of positions that are life-changing. Every one of those individuals enters into that testing cycle with the expectation that they're going to be evaluated on their merits, on their best ability to compete with that pool of candidates. And I think the challenge with that is that we have to go through that entire pool before we actually stop and say, we want to think anew about how we meet an exigency of a hiring situation that has changed dramatically over the last couple of years with policing. It really is a model that for years and years we used in civil service. We essentially have a mini civil service system that is fraught with all sorts of complexities and delays and important rigor. Like hiring a police officer is among the most complicated and important responsibilities that we have in government, and we have to really be diligent about it, but it is taking way too long. And so we ended the process on Saturday, and on Monday we sat down, the chief and I sat down, and we actually put together a plan to really change the way we hire so that we can be much more expeditious. And we have the fundamentals of that. It's been shared with the union, and we're going to have a few meetings, and we're going to really try to align, the broader responsibilities that we share, and really make this work. I have every confidence that we can do better, and I think we just need to get back to that teamwork that has helped us accomplish a lot over the last few years. I do think it's really helpful that we're not tied to a civil service system right now, because that system, you know, is a state law, and there are guidelines. We can actually change every aspect of this, but we have to work with our union and try to build consensus on that. That's what we're going to try to do. But in the absence of that, we still have to fill these positions. So we're just going to have to get this done.
Can you share that plan with us?
I can share some details. We're working out the draft right now. But once we finalize that,
Yeah, not today, but-
once I get that discussion through with the union, I will share that with you.
Within the next week or two, is that reasonable?
It's my hope,
Yeah.
but I have to have a few conversations, and I just don't think it's going to be helpful to, you know, get that out into a broad network. Well,
But I think that I'm going to just chime in. You tell me if this is not, I'm going to dig a little deeper. I think that Doug might say before it's baked and done, is there a chance for us in executive session, because it would be
Sure.
having to do with negotiations, I think is what Doug was probably really going to, not to have you give it to us once it's baked and done. I think, Doug, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just.
Well, I was expecting that Sean was going to come back with something I was going to love.
Okay, never mind then.
But yes, of course. But the main thing is not necessarily that I'm, you know, in any way, shape or form prepared to kind of analyze all the nuances of every step of this process. That's your job. It's more like at the end product of it, you kind of putting yourself out there to say, with this process I'm laying out here, I expect that in the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, this is what the hiring will be. That's what we need, the end product, right? You need to figure out the details how to get there. At least as far as I'm concerned, I'm not necessarily going to be very helpful in those, you know.
Understood.
So I have a comment, because, you know, I have been vocal about this. I was also part of the oral board in the first hiring process. So I had to really learn about the process, and I thought the process that was devised was a good process. And the only thing that I really walked away thinking was that the commitment to time was the Achilles heel. And so what I've done is I have put together my personal recommendation on the timeline, just as a recommendation, because I think that this can be done in 41 days. And first off, we have to forecast out what is it going to cost, because there are costs associated with the background checks, paying overtime so that, you know, somebody's not going on vacation and then waiting for a background check, and then just making a commitment to no delays. And maybe I have oversimplified it. I don't think so. I've looked at it for 2 weeks. I read the manual that was agreed upon as far as hiring, and I think once there is a clear plan on how we're going to be advertising and really trying to cast that wide net, and that's why we left civil service. Once that net has been cast, then this is my recommendation, so you can each have one copy. And it's basically, I go from day 1 all the way down to day 41.
There you go, Sean. It's done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's
41 days.
You did it in 2 weeks. What have you been doing?
It's going to be 6 weeks.
You know, Chris says thank you and thank you.
Anything else? Public comment. We will welcome public comment from members of the public, either in the room or on Teams. If you're in the room, please stand up next to Mary Ellen, just because of the wonky microphone situation here. State your name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Maybe not.
No, we'll have.
Hey guys,
Hey,
Andrea Moore, 15 Sheridan Road. So I am from many times here to speak about Kings Beach. One thing I just want to begin with stating is the first time I came in front of you guys, we had 643 members, and now we have 1,100 in just a few weeks. So certainly this community really cares about this issue. I actually ask people before they join, why do you want to be part of this? And we have folks from Nahant, Saugus, people who grew up here, people who are new here. People really, really care about this issue and want to keep our foot on the gas about it. So I just wanted to present some recommendations this evening. I know there's an important report coming out, and I'm looking forward to reading that and adjusting it and helping in whatever way I can. And I also wanted to recognize all the positives that have happened this year, and this outlines a couple of those. But as we all know, the beach season is over now, and testing will stop. And that is, in my opinion, a big deficit in this community because people don't stop using the beach pretty much ever. And surfers come and kids go in the water, and people are not going to stop using the beach. And this was the worst safety record on record across the region. So as you probably know by now, 91% of days at Kings Beach this summer were unsafe in terms of the bacteria content in the water, which is a fancy way of saying there's feces in the water. So I wanted to point that out. And I also wanted to point out that it's not, Kings Beach is the core of this issue, right? I don't want to like dilute this with other beaches. Other beaches are affected by the heavy rains, but I really would implore you to stick to this issue because it is 130 years old. It is not going to go away without a significant amount of effort and pressure and focus, really focus on that issue. So I also wanted to point out that thanks to the bacteria at Kings Beach, most likely, Nahant, north of the bathhouse, was closed 55% of this year. The beach they never stopped collecting money, which I think is its own issue. There wasn't accurate, warnings for folks. And so, there's definitely, our problem is now spreading to areas like Nahant. So I took the graphic here, which shows the bacterial content at Kings Beach, at Stacy's Brook specifically. And you can see here where the safe level is, and it never literally meets that. And oftentimes 12 days out of the last cycle, we're pure raw sewage. So we're talking about, kids walking through raw sewage in our town. And I think that's honestly embarrassing. And it's unsafe, right? So in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people in our group, there are a couple of things that I would really implore you to continue the work that you've already begun. One is to prioritize lining the pipes, right? We've gotten a bit off track. Please, please, please focus back on that. I would love to see additional testing from April through November in the beaches. I would love to see a physical warning at Stacy's Brook on the beach because people walk through it all the time. I'd ask people if they are aware of it. They don't know. Please warn visitors at other entrances at beaches that are testing positive or have gone, or if there's been a heavy rain event. There is no warning at these beaches. That's not okay. Right? We have to let people know with kids that you can't go in the water, that it's not safe. And just really continue to be clear about the messaging in the town. I know I've gone over. I really appreciate the additional time. The last thing I would just suggest is to please have more regular steering committee meetings. It's a really big problem. And I know that there's a lot of stakeholders in it. So please, 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 please keep your foot on the gas on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So I just want to be really quick. Liz Smith, Precinct 3. I just want to say I really appreciate the attention that you guys are focusing in on this. It's been a long, hard road over the last year, sometimes feeling like, there's just a few people beating a really hard drum. But to be able to go online today and see that 9/1 report available online for anybody who wants to look at it, that's huge. That is huge progress. And I think it was the August 2nd meeting, Kings Beach was mentioned 4 or 5 times by various members of this group. And I just want to say I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the focus. I really appreciate the attention it's getting. It's getting a lot of attention. I've been at the farmers market the last 2 weeks and people support this and people are just really happy that everybody is starting to pay attention. So thanks.
And thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
We have a hand raised on Teams. We have Hannah. Hannah, please state your name and your address and precinct if known.
Just unmute yourself.
Hannah, you can unmute yourself. There you go. You had you for a second. What's on?
Okay, sorry, it's me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I have never used Teams before, so this is exciting and new, and I'm old. All right, is this only about beach stuff, or is this open comment?
This is public comment. You have 3 minutes to comment
right.
about anything not on the agenda. Please state your name, your address, and your voting precinct.
Okay, my name is Hannah Sharpless. I live at 25 Walker Road. I can't remember what precinct I'm in, but I swear I'm in one. And I spent about 3 hours today pulling weeds at the microforest. I am a die on the hill microforest fan. And I just want to express some of my feelings about the microforest. I realize it is a small potatoes in the scheme of the challenges that we are facing environmentally in Swampscott, but I wrote my ideas down because that will work better for everybody. All right, I'm writing what I hope will be a succinct and sincere letter to express my undying support for the microforest at the corner of Walker and Paradise. I am aware that the forest in its current state looks, to put it kindly, unintentional. But we are growing a forest, and it has been less than 3 years. Last summer, we experienced unprecedented drought, and yet hundreds of the bare root seedlings survived and are now thriving. This year was a pendulum swing that brought deluge conditions, and the native trees thrived. So too did the weeds, though they still served a valuable purpose, preventing erosion during punishing storms. And people began to question the project, to see it as an eyesore and something that does not properly invite people into the historic Olmsted district, of which we are understandably proud. The answer to this challenge is not to bulldoze this vibrant experiment that is in perfect harmony with the town's climate action plan. It would be the grossest irony when our schools are calling half days due to extraordinary heat events to replace an intentional and beneficial open space that filters air, sequesters carbon, cools the ground, and feeds and shelters pollinators and wildlife with grass, a bed of costly disposable non-native annuals, or even worse, some sort of statue. This forest is a monument and a gift to future generations of Swampscott and this planet. And no, we should not move it to a less conspicuous place, because a huge part of the benefit of this microforest is to educate, inspire, and build awareness. I would agree that this has not been robustly communicated, and I believe there is work that needs to be done on multiple levels in order to host a microforest that has happy neighbors and an engaged and informed community. Physically, there are steps that can be taken to make the site more clearly defined and attractive to community members and visitors to Swampscott. This cannot purely be the responsibility of the Swampscott Conservancy, and I believe that the town infrastructure has the capacity to make this project a success. These are just my thoughts, so what I'm about to say, and I would encourage a committee or a poll to help gather ideas. I would say maintain a clear-cut area in front of the sign. Maybe even put a bench in. I heard somebody wanted a bench. Come up with a weeding plan that is in keeping with the health and needs of the forest, while also making sure that as the trees mature, the area does not look abandoned, creating the anxiety that it has created for people. Create some kind of barrier, like the rope and post barriers at the end of Fisherman's Beach, and possibly even use that barrier to create a sort of winding path through the forest with plant identification signage. Invest in some solid, legit-looking signage, not stake signs, that describes the process and timeline, as well as maybe showing photos of the fully grown forests that exist in other communities. Create a robust social media and online education campaign. I love posting and then getting people to yell at me online. No, I really don't, but I would do it for this. Get the schools involved with walking visits and maybe ask the high school environmental club to adopt the microforest. But I really want to emphasize, and I know my time is up, is that we can get used to things that are different than what we think of as normal. And we should, as our understanding of the impact of what we plant and how we garden changes. Think of No Mow May that allows butterflies like swallowtails. My son is twerking at me right now. Butterflies, Theo, go away. Butterflies like swallowtails to complete their metamorphosis in dead leaves. When we remove those leaves, we remove those pollinators. Think of the fact that when I first moved to this town as a pregnant woman, one of the ways I nested was by digging dandelions out of my yard. And I am now thrilled to see yards covered in dandelions because we know they are the first flower available to pollinators in the community. How great is that for everybody? No dandelion removal. So just think before you say this didn't work. Think how small 2 years is in the scheme of the world and how much we are trying to teach our kids what positive action looks like before we plow it under and replace it with kale and cabbage and marigolds and pansies and tulips, which have their place and are beautiful, but serve no real restorative purpose in our ecosystem. And that is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah. Seeing no additional hands raised on Teams or in the room, we'll move on to new business. We're going to start with the reading of the National Senior Center Month Proclamation. Katie, will you kick us off? Yes.
All right. Beginning at the top. Whereas since 2007, National Senior Center Month is celebrated every year in September, as recognized by the National Council on Aging and the National Institute of Senior Centers, to celebrate senior centers across the country and the incredible work they do to enrich and extend the lives of older adults. And
whereas the Swampscott Senior Center is committed to being an inclusive community and welcoming of all people, regardless of their race, religion, sexual orientation, and gender identity, and recognizes that we are a diverse community. And
whereas the town of Swampscott supports the rights of every citizen to experience equality and freedom from discrimination. And
whereas the origin of National Senior Center Month can be found in National Senior Center Week, which was first celebrated annually in May of 1979 to recognize the more than 10,000 senior centers throughout the nation and gain wide support through organizations such as National Council on Aging, the U.S. Conference of Mayors Aging Task Force, and the full Senate and House Select Committee on Aging. And
whereas in 1985, President Ronald Reagan signed the first Senior Center Week presidential proclamation with the support of the National Institute of Senior Centers. And by 2007, the idea behind National Senior Center Week became so popular that NISC expanded the celebration of senior centers to an entire month and designating each September to be the month of celebration. And
whereas the town of Swampscott has a senior center that focuses on social, educational, and wellness programs by providing seniors with a wide variety of enriching programming, nutritious meals, and low-cost transportation. And
whereas the town of Swampscott is proud of our expanding senior community and understands that senior centers are paramount to the overall health of our senior citizens, particularly as the center strives to engage with isolated seniors, bringing them into community. And
whereas Swampscott is embarking on an endeavor to create a state-of-the-art center for all ages designed to address the needs of seniors together with all generations in one community center. And
whereas communities embarking on an endeavor to create a state-of-the-art. Oh, the next one, sorry. Now, therefore, by virtue of the authority vested in the town administrator and each of the below selected board members in the town of Swampscott, we hereby proclaim the month of September as National Senior Center Month.
In the town of Swampscott, Massachusetts, and encourage all faith-based and nonprofit organizations, residents, businesses, and public institutions to acknowledge, honor, value, and celebrate older adults' contributions to our community and to recognize the importance of those who serve them daily.
in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused to be affixed the Great Seal of the town of Swampscott, Massachusetts, the 6th day of September, 2023.
Thank you.
Sorry, the Suicide Prevention Month, the ones in your packets, there are a few changes. So the one that's in the green folder is the one that should be read. Okay, please.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
National Suicide Prevention and Action Month proclamation by the Select Board. Whereas September is known globally as Suicide Prevention and Action Month, the National Suicide Prevention and Action Month proclamation was created to raise the visibility of the mental health resources and suicide prevention services available in our community. The goal is to start the conversation about mental health and the impact of suicide to help destigmatize the conversation and help connect people with the appropriate support services. And
Whereas according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, suicide is the second leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 10 and 34, with more than 48,000 people dying by suicide annually in the United States, with a daily rate of 132. In 2022, more than 600 Massachusetts residents died by suicide. And
whereas every suicide directly impacts a minimum of 100 additional people, including family, friends, coworkers, neighbors, and community members. And we're just going to go back.
Whereas the town of Swampscott publicly places its full support behind those who work in the fields of mental health, education, and law enforcement. And
whereas global organizations like Hope for the Day, as well as the town's local mental health partner, serve on the front lines of a war that many still refuse to discuss, as stigma regarding suicide and mental health issues is far too prevalent. And
whereas we encourage all residents to take the time to understand the importance of mental health education and recognize that taking care of ourselves and others includes taking care of mental health.
Now, therefore, on behalf of the entire Select Board, we do hereby proclaim September 2023 as National Suicide Prevention and Action. I'll finish. In the town of Swampscott, Massachusetts, and encourage all citizens to join us in a worthy observance. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused to be affixed the Great Seal of the town of Massachusetts this 6th day of September 2023.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Yeah, I do.
David, can I say something quickly? The proclamation fails to recognize 988, which is the national hotline for crisis and suicide prevention. And so I hope parents are teaching their kids and us are teaching our families that 988 should be known like 911 to be able to help people. And there's no bad reason to call. So reach out and use that hotline and seek help.
Yeah, and just as we're emerging from this, from the 3+ years of a pandemic, you know, we're out of the pandemic, but we're now into a full-blown mental health crisis. So I think bringing awareness to this, I issuing this proclamation is great, but you know, hopefully the town can also put some additional resources on its website and continue to work with the Board of Health and Health Directors to really make these resources available, prevalent, and really obvious to those, so we can get the word out and protect our residents and citizens and our families.
Absolutely, David. Really appreciate, Peter, you bringing up the suicide prevention hotline of 988. Look, we know we're in a crisis, and we know that, you know, this is a stigma to talk about mental health. It's still a problem, and we want to make sure that families just understand that there's a lot of help out there and support. So we double some of these efforts. I know the police department and the fire department and our Board of Health are all talking about ways that we can really engage citizens a little bit differently to ensure that, you know, we can be supportive. So how about we have some? Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, and hopefully our school department is, you know, helping teachers understand how to recognize certain markers for depression and mental health issues, and additionally teaching our young folks to be supporting each other, not tearing each other down, but actually helping one another if they see other students struggling. You know, if they're not the person who can get them help, finding somebody who is. So everybody needs to know that there is so much support out there. It's not just rhetoric. It exists, and how we get people connected to that.
Is this normal that you use this in all the channels throughout the month, newsletter and those types of things?
We'll send this out. You know, it'll become part of a, opportunity for us to, help share this proclamation with a number of different groups, and we'll ask that it, be read and just be a conversation starter with a lot of organizations.
The last thing, if it's okay for me to say on this, is I just, Lynn last year allocated $500,000 for an unarmed crisis management team. And if you've been in Lynn enough, you see the vehicle, actually. It's rolling up to a lot of events. And back when we did the Swampscott Reporter and we really had a police log, you'd read the police log and you're like, well, not much is happening in Swampscott. And that's because the police log is sanitized. It never actually tells you what the calls are. And it's for reason, privacy and other reasons for that. And the vast majority of them, that's an overstatement, a large number of them has to do with chemical dependency and mental health issues. And we have officers who have done yeoman's work in getting more sensitized and equipped to be able to do it. But what we haven't done is backfilled it with mental health, substance abuse advisors that really can take the responsibility from that initial call after it's been made a safe situation to be able to do the follow-up. And I know that our police officers have expressed that they feel strained. So maybe that follow-up, maybe in the future we can find a way to resource having that follow-up by mental health professionals or chemical dependency professionals to really offer that guidance and that family support. Because the truth is, our town is no different than any other town. And if you really look at the data and you really look at the call logs and you really look at what happens here, a large number of the calls have to do with chemical dependency, has to do with violence that's as a result of mental defect or chemical dependency, things of that nature. So I would just, and I know, Sean, you talked about this, so I know you were squarely on board with it, but if we can find a way as we are thinking about the future here to start weaving that in, because that is.
I absolutely, I'm so glad you are bringing these issues up, because I do think, I just looked today, there are 3 communities on the MMA, job website that are posting for a position for a behavioral health professional that will be emerged in a municipal police department that will support 3 different communities. And frankly, I would love to see a position like that in Swampscott, hosted by Swampscott, but shared through the region. I think there are incredible opportunities for us to actually be more innovative and supportive. And we've got to be able to see some of these challenges as opportunities, because there's a real need there and we're not meeting it. So we've got to really wrap our heads around some of these best practices that are starting to emerge. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can just look at where communities are really leaning into saving lives and making a real strong, powerful difference. And
it's not novel. It's not novel. It's Greenfield and Deerfield, the 2 of the communities that are in the forefront of this. That's right. And if you think about it, with resource-constrained communities, those are resource-constrained communities. So this is not the forefront. There are communities that have no resources or have very little resources that have pooled together to create that position. And so maybe that's a good start for us and to talk with our community neighbors.
When is funding going to be available on those lawsuits? The drug opioid lawsuits.
Yeah, we have some of the funding, and it's going to be doled out over the next few years. So
I think some of it's now back in the courts, because I believe the Supreme Court rejected the largest portion of the settlement, so it has to go back to.
But isn't there a portion of the settlement that was rejected?
No. The largest portion is what I'm talking about, but there's other portions that also are paying.
Yeah, we had a warrant article.
Yeah.
So there would be some funding.
Yeah.
There are. I just think, for me, these are one-time funds, and I wouldn't use one-time funds for reoccurring. I think, what I'd like to see is some of these best practices that are happening in other communities that are regional, that are supporting embedded professionals that are going to be part of an emergency response and really help, backfill the void after an incident, because after that initial response, what happens? And oftentimes it's not enough. And
I think
we've got to figure that out.
The other thing is, it's often not just one response, right? It's often multiple calls, helping the same individuals, and without the support on the back end, they're gonna keep being in those positions. They need to understand that there are helping hands reaching out so that they have the tools that they need to put themselves in a better position. I mean, mental health is a cycle that it is very difficult for an individual themselves to help themselves out if they need support. They need people there with them while it's happening, after it's happened, to ensure that they don't go back to a place where, you know, they can't get out of again. And without having something like this, I think it's, I don't know the data, but it's almost certain that we'll be back helping those same individuals. So I think it's really important, if we're going to get anywhere with combating the mental health crisis, that we're looking to actually provide services in mental health and not just proclamations. So.
John, you had mentioned funding, and I do recall that we weren't receiving a lump sum. We were receiving funds over, I want to say, a 15 or a 20-year period. And plus, we're paying for this anyway. If our police officers who are not behavioral health professionals are responding to these calls, you know, their attention is being taken, you know, from other matters to deal with these mental health issues, to deal with these substance abuse issues. So, you know, we are paying for it one way or another. So, you know, I would certainly think that we should, you know, explore how we can find, you know, funds in the budget, the funds that are coming to us from settlement, to see what we can do, how we can leverage those resources with the community need, the regional need.
Appreciate that. I really appreciate the board's support for this, because frankly, I want to get beyond the rhetoric here. I really appreciate, you know, this sense that somehow these proclamations are just Pyrrhic. We don't want to just read proclamations. We want to save lives, and we've got to do something different in order to save those lives. We've actually got to create some positions and some responsibilities, and we've got to really take some of the best practice examples and put them into place. We can do this, and we actually have the flexibility to do this. And I'll work with our police departments, our health departments, and our fire department, and really think about ways that we can strengthen our response.
Thanks. Great. We'll move on to our first reading of the Hadley School RFP.
And I'm going to go around and read it.
We're each going to take a paragraph. So, David, would you like me to go ahead and read on it?
Mr. Fitzgerald, can I just mention the Narcan training that was given at the, I wasn't able to make it, but I think something like that, if that can get redone,
Sure.
please. Sorry.
Absolutely. Great idea. I'm happy to talk about getting more people trained in Narcan.
And
Save lives.
high school, because I think empowering students
Sure.
is a good help.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You good?
Yep.
All right. So in the packet tonight is the draft of the RFP for the hotel RFP, consistent with town meeting approval. This year's update. Wait, this year's annual town meeting. I've forgotten dates. This year's annual town meeting, and that has been prepared with the help of Pinnacle Advisors, our town's consultant, and I also want to just thank town staff as well for their participation in creating this. And I also want to thank Jonathan Lehman from the Historical Commission, who wrote a really great piece about the history of Swampscott hotels, which is now included as part of the RFP process. The only change that I'm aware of since the draft you have now is the fact that Pinnacle Partners is really strongly suggesting to us that we do a full 90-day open period for responses. And so that would change assuming for the sake of conversation, September 15th is when the RFP goes out. It would be until December 15th it comes back. So the dates will shift by roughly 1 month in here. We'll try and catch back some of that time here. So we might tighten some of the other timeframes, which are all discretionary timeframes, just kind of giving a sense of when we would review, when we would meet, when we would negotiate, things of that nature. So that's going to be revised. So I suspect the end date's not going to change. We're going to kind of squish some of the later things, but we will give, my suggestion anyways, is that we do give the full 90-day response period. Pinnacle will be, as hoped, actively out there in the marketplace, reaching out to who they believe to be appropriate groups to make sure this opportunity is seen. We have had a number of groups reach out preemptively as well, and if they requested to go see the Hadley, and the Hadley was available during the summer, the facilities director was nice enough to be able to show them. I attended a couple of those as well. Interesting questions. It's interesting to sit there and listen to their thought process here. The RFP speaks for itself. Happy to take questions. I do want to just stress, I do expect that there's going to be some limited language changes between now and our final reading. And it's really just going to be to continually and often express the following message, which is this is an invitation for ideas. This is not the idea. Right. And the idea, town meeting did set some parameters. And if you remember, we talked at town meeting about a welcome mat with parameters. Right. But the message is to the community out there saying, come to Swampscott with your ideas. Let us talk about your ideas and invite those that deal in this industry or know things about the industry or creative people that have ideas about things to come to us and say, hey, we think it should be this. And so in the package, as you may recall, Pinnacle did do a marketing study, and Pinnacle made a recommendation for a possible program, and then Group One Architects, who is one of the preeminent architects for hotels in the city of Boston, did some test fits of the Hadley historical building, the original portion. That's in here, but we're just going to add some more language to stress saying that that's not mandated. It's merely just the juice, if you will, the creativity to show you one idea, and there could have other ideas as well to bring back to us. That doesn't negate that we've created some kind of priorities, right? Maintaining the historical building is a priority for us, and it's been a priority. We've said that since day one. Flexibility about the annex is continued as well, which is the annex building, not so much so. So there's going to be some Pinnacle suggestion, and they're going to get some language by the end of the week to us that's just literally is going to just be, it's already in here in a couple of places where it just says, this is just one idea, don't feel constrained, come back, and propose your idea, consistent with zoning, consistent with town meeting approval, but come back with your ideas. That way we get the full view of the market, as opposed to, I think, ask the market to respond to all of us about our ideas of a hotel, which isn't necessarily what the market's idea of the hotel would be. It's still, at the end of the day, ours to say yes or no, right? So we're not obligated to take any ideas. If anything, it's going to feed our knowledge about these things. And then finally, I'm just going to speak generally about the macroeconomic situation. To be perfectly clear, you know that I do this during the day. I don't do hotels. I stay in hotels. But the capital markets are simply said are not great at the moment for real estate. And David's in the lending side and can speak to it. So look, I said it at town meeting. Don't know what the capital markets are going to do and where that is. That can have absolutely nothing to do with Swampscott. Right. It has, there are some great projects that I have for my team to work on that we're letting go because we can't make them work. It's not because of the projects, it's because of the timing in the capital markets. It doesn't make sense anymore to do those projects. So I don't know what that means for us. I'm glad we have Pinnacle on our side, pounding the pavement and gonna put that out there. And so that doesn't mean that this isn't the right idea. It doesn't mean it's not the idea that we should do. It just may be that our exact moment right now may not be the best, having nothing to do with any of us, just because of macroeconomic concerns. And this one time, I hope that I'm completely wrong. And I hope that the world responds accordingly and comes with some great ideas and gives us stuff to have to seriously consider and debate and think about. So at least we're consciously making an affirmative decision for the future, one way or another on that. With that, I'm happy to take questions. I think that David did send an email to us about potentially doing the second reading next week. And I would ask that we do the second reading next week, and that's just to be consistent with Pinnacle's request to add, basically to do a full 90 days. It's important to get the responses before the end of the year. And so we want December 15th to be the deadline and not December 31st or January, because we want to get it before the holiday season there. So I would just ask that we, I don't anticipate substantive changes. If you see any changes, you'll see them in red line, but I don't anticipate substantive changes that would require.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, was when can this board anticipate a red line version ahead of the second reading, which we have posted for 6:30 on 9/11.
So I'm happy to commit to Friday by noon. You'd get it, and we'd also post it online as well, the red line. And so it would be a red line from this version here. Again, I think it's going to be minimal at most changes on it. Town council has it for a second look. They took an initial look. They're doing a second look right now just to see just the final stuff, just to make sure that they don't have any questions as well. But that would be dotting I's and crossing T's, I believe. And then that additional language I mentioned just about encouraging people to be creative and not feel as though the plans that are in here are mandatory.
Maybe a watermark on top.
Like literally a watermark.
Don't use this idea. You got a better one.
I thought I did a good job putting it in here, but they went back and said, no, you should really just keep on saying this is just an idea. This is an idea. So
Is this draft going to be online?
Yep.
Is draft online now? Get online right now?
it is. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm going to ask Diane or Sean.
I'll get back to you. I don't know.
Or can we have it online tomorrow?
Yes.
Fair enough. Other questions?
Is finalists selected, so we're shooting for December 31st.
Yeah, so on the schedule, Mary Ellen, that. Yeah, so the fifth line down won't be November 15th, it will be December 15th. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work with, it's frankly, I'm gonna work with staff because it's mostly internal after that, just to compress those dates afterwards so that we're still finishing within the time frame expressed here. It just means that we're going to probably have to be a little bit more nimble and meet quicker and do things quicker. I'm going to set forth here. I have said this before. I'm sorry. I have said this before that I do think that there's probably going to be, I think I said it's a town meeting, but I'll say it here again. I do suspect that there's probably going to be a need to go back to town meeting, potentially on real estate taxes or other things. I said that at town meeting, I'm going to say that now. So we should anticipate whether it's a special town meeting or the annual town meeting. I'm just setting the expectation that these schedules somewhat tie in with that need. I can't imagine that it's not going to come up, and that's going to be something we're going to have to decide if we're open to doing or not. But we consider the schedule in connection with town meeting as well.
So the RFP is currently being added to the website at this very meeting. So it's the Hadley page.
I think that handsome guy up there maybe knows about.
That's right. That Mary Ellen, the handsome guy up there that you referenced earlier. Is
good.
Putting it up on the website as we speak.
So all the developers that are watching this meeting tonight, know where they can go find it. Okay.
This is the must see TV.
Good show.
Hotel
All
development.
right, good.
Okay, I have a couple questions. Are you finished or?
I am.
Okay. Anything? A non-surprising request from me. In the Pine Street RFP, we had added a kind of green design, net zero lead evaluation criteria.
Yeah.
Can we add that here as well?
So we've discussed it, and I say we've been clinical, we've discussed it. This is the issue. That building is, it'll be a Herculean thing. And what we don't want to do is scare people, because it's going to be a very hard adaptation to be able to just candidly in that building in particular.
We're not saying they're disqualified.
Yeah, no, I
It's an
hear you.
encouragement.
I hear you. I hear you. I'm totally in agreement with the concept.
I think so.
No issue whatsoever with the concept.
Yeah.
Let me go back and talk with them about how to word it in a way that says that we were careful in a number of these preferences or the evaluations to make sure that they seemed
We have a lot of flexibility.
we have complete flexibility.
Right.
Let's be perfectly clear. The board, when the board meets on this stuff, we're not buying a dump truck for the lowest bid. Where the board has significant flexibility.
Mhm.
No, so I hear you. So let me thank you for raising it.
But your concern is you don't want to scare somebody away or.
Yeah, a building like this is very hard to do passive house. It's very hard to do anything that's actually LEED certified.
Right.
I mean, just candidly, the expense is significant in the way in which, sadly, hotels are usually heated and cooled isn't the most efficient way of doing things. So, but I hear you. It doesn't mean that if someone came and we had a unicorn came and said, "Hey, I want to, do all electric," and tripled.
Well, let's not presage it by calling them a unicorn. I mean, I think that, you know, there's a lot of
Fair enough.
evolution here, right?
If
I mean,
a
lot of people are
stallion,
using-
a stallion, okay,
Right.
Okay.
with a party hat in its head that made it look like.
Order.
Instead, an idea might be is explaining like a philosophy related to Swampscott instead of a preference related to the building, like that we're moving in this way. So it would be a nod rather than.
Yeah, no, I hear your thing. Let me just remind me of the Pine Street language, and maybe there's a way to fuse that. That's an interesting idea.
Is there any way that they're basically, this all boils down to give us a number, either for the lease or the purchase? In many ways, and I'll come back to it. There's two ways in which it appears that way to me. One is like, you know, that's the sheet at the end. I mean, that's very similar to Pine Street. What's different from Pine Street, my big reference point, obviously, is that we had a lot more kind of minimum submittal requirements in Pine Street.
Yeah.
A lot more kind of required description of what they were really offering, which, you know, when I kind of did a admittedly relatively quick scan of like what was included here versus there was a big difference. And I didn't know if that was very conscious because of the different, you know, purchase we're making here, or if that's an opportunity for us to make sure that we're getting a much more comprehensive plan and explanation.
Yeah, so, sorry, go ahead, Kate.
I was gonna say, I feel like the difference, sort of apples and oranges, same
Yeah.
fruit, but different, because we have an idea at Pine Street we want to see come to fruition. Here, we all have been saying, come with your ideas. Here's some fuel to ruminate with your ideas, but you know, we'd like to see the idea not swayed by our ideas. Like we want to see the best version of this, and it doesn't have to be our version.
I'm not talking about the specifics. I'm talking about the structure of, you know, what is your plan for X, Y, and Z?
I just
Not
refer you to
that you need to have X, Y,
Yeah,
and Z.
so page 12 of the RFP contains the submission requirements.
Mhm.
I've actually taken it from other hotel RFP responses. So that's where this came from. I'll go back and look at Pine Street, I was pretty involved with drafting that, but I can't remember for the life of me what we put in, to be honest with you. So I'll go back
I
and
left
look
it
at
in the
that.
car,
No,
so-
that's fine. I'll go back and look at that to see if there's things. What I will say is the level of what you're going to get in response to this RFP is going to be extremely different. Level quality of response, quality of material or presentation materials, I anticipate to be materially different than what you're going to see for Pine Street. Pine Street is, no disrespect, but a bit more casual, a bit more stock, boilerplate. The housing nonprofits do this all the time. They submit a lot of things. They have the same architects usually working on projects, so they have them on retainer, and we'll recognize the same names keep coming back. And so this tends to be a different quality where they are selling brand, they're selling credentials.
You don't have to tell them they're going to feed in a way. Yeah,
It is,
yeah.
but I will go back and look
Okay.
at the Pine Street. Fair point. Let me go back and look at Pine Street to see if we missed anything.
Okay.
Because I just don't remember Pine Street right now.
How is this being advertised? Like, you know, maybe hotel people way up in Maine, boutique hotel people.
Yeah.
How do they know that we have something like this going on? How do people down in Maryland or wherever? I mean, how does this get advertised out there?
So obviously the normal ways, we're doing the legally required ways through the registry and whatnot to advertise that. We have the benefit of having Pinnacle on our team, who's basically covers the East Coast. And so Pinnacle is going to actually be using their network to do blasts of this, which is something we normally don't do, right? We don't normally blast an RFP. I'll use Pine Street as an example. We did, Pete Kane and Marzi Glasgow did email out local nonprofits who have previously communicated with the town to say, hey, we have an RFP out there for veteran senior housing or veteran housing type of thing. But that was a limited purview because we have Pinnacle on our team and, as our consultant here, they will actively reach out. There are also other, this is a less formal answer, there are other hotel, what I'll call brokers in the Boston community that between Rachel Rajinski and myself, we've reached out to as well to let them know that we're going to share it with them when it comes out. don't worry about commissions. They're not paid by us. They would be paid by the hotel that they represent. So this is actually, I think, going to get much more coverage than anything I've been part of for the town, just because we've never had a trade consultant like this on board. You know, the senior affordable housing, the condo development, we literally did the registry for those and nothing more. But I welcome other ideas. We can do billboards for all. I mean, like, I'm being actually serious. We can. There are other. I can go back to Rachel and say, give me more. Tell me how we can go even further, because we can, and it's not in the realm of things. Money's not the issue here. Those aren't really expensive things. But I'm happy to ask her. Worth doing.
Anything we can do to really get the word out on this.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know that you were done.
Okay, I have two other things. Was it here at town meeting that we evolved and there was something added about a community room?
There's actually language in the warrant.
Someone made an amendment, right?
Yeah.
In the warrant.
And that
is that in
you're
here?
actually saying it's actually supposed to be an exhibit. So let me just make sure. I'll make sure it's in there.
That's what we ended up with. Just the community room was then in that amendment, or was there anything?
That's not quite the language, but yes,
Yeah.
that was it. Yep.
Okay.
I believe the sponsor of that amendment is sitting in this room right now.
No.
We're all going to put Narcan in that room. We've got him covered.
Last thing, will this be restricted as a hotel forever? Will it be deed restricted, or will they be required to have a hotel, or could they create a hotel and 3 years later decide to flip it into something else?
Yeah, so really great question. And if I was to tell you where we spent a lot of time doing is having that conversation. So
and I don't even know if we should have this conversation publicly.
No, it's okay. I mean, it is what it is. The LDA is our contract with the developer, right? And so we're going to have a land disposition agreement, which is our contract between the town, and it's the equivalent of the purchase and sale agreement or whatnot. There'll be attached to that the other legal documents that attach to that. That LDA is going to mandate the hotel use. I will say, do not be surprised that they come back and say, well, what if a hotel fails? Like, we just put $30 million in this building, what do we do? And so we're going to have conversations as a community as to what rights we want to protect ourselves and what right the market may require there. And that's just frankly, that's just a natural thing that we're just going to have a conversation about. I don't want to have that conversation tonight, just because that's something we're going to have to decide how we want to handle, and we can talk privately. So we're not telling the universe how we want to handle, but I do you're raising a really legitimate point, but one that there's not a easy answer for me just to give you, because if lenders in particular, there's going to be lenders just like on any project. They're going to want rights if something happens and they need to step in, and they're just going to want to know what their rights are. And it's just going to be a detailed conversation that I just don't have clarity on for you right now.
Yeah.
Great question, though.
Are there restrictions on that site too?
There is one about no market rate housing.
So do you think that will negatively impact bidders with lending?
That's really
That can
interesting.
get flipped over to a town meeting.
What's that?
That can get reversed.
Yeah, it can. Yes, it can get reversed. But I don't think so.
Okay.
Katie, you're asking me a question. I gave you an answer as if I'd been thinking about it for 20 minutes. I have been thinking about that. I don't.
It's a select board vote.
No, that was a town meeting. We took it to town meeting. So I remember proposing it, and I remember why I did it, and because I wanted people to not candidly fear that with the new elementary school coming on board that we were going to have another market rate housing project, and because no one intended that. So town meeting approved it, and we actually voted it a couple of meetings afterwards and recorded it. So it's actually recorded.
Just don't understand the landscape of commercial lending that well, so I don't know if that negatively impacts bidders or.
No, it's a great. I don't think so, but I'm gonna write this down, and I frankly have never even talked to Rachel about this topic in particular, and I don't think staff is either. So market rate housing.
I have one other thing, but it's adjacent. Okay. Specifically adjacent to the building, the playground. I know we've talked about it numerous times. I know it's not related to the RFP and the hotel will not be required to have a playground, but we should be required to move that playground somewhere where it can be used within the vicinity of that current playground because it is well used and loved.
Yeah, so we've actually had some conversations about that. We can include that into our conversations with them. I think frankly, it's a cost issue, but that's I mean that in a good way. I mean, like, it's just a cost issue.
Yeah.
It's not anything else. That's just doing that. So I think we're going to be able to, let's not lose that point.
Yeah.
You've
And
been
I
consistent on it.
would love to explore Lidscott Park as an option. I know that it's been touted as having an issue because of its restrictions, but it has swings on it and it has some sort of oddly black-topped court of some sort that is unused. So just want to really have town council take a look at that and see if not there, maybe in front of town hall.
Is it absolutely, is it going to be an absolute loss of that playground?
Yeah, I don't know the answer, but I would be,
assume.
but I think you should assume the answer.
Yeah.
Is going to be yes.
So just from that seat, not moving it to a spot a mile away, that's not helpful to that neighborhood.
Sure. Kitty, we can look into the deed restriction on Lidscott.
Yes.
Or other possible areas, but it would be great.
Other questions? Okay. Again, I'll get you the red line by noon on Friday. Thanks everyone for their diligence in reviewing it. And
Thank you for all your work. I assume all your work.
A lot of work. Yeah, thank you, Steve. We'll move on to discussion of the select board.
do you mind if can I just suggest, can we do the Pine Street update first? Just because others may not be as interested in the handboard stuff and we can talk about Pine Street and then we'll get stuck in the mud.
That's all good. Yes.
And handbook stuff.
Of course. So really what brought about this discussion with the Pine Street RFP status and project finance, I've been in contact with the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, Kim Martin Epstein. Unfortunately, tonight she had conflict and could not attend our meeting. But we've been talking with her for a number of months, and she's certainly going to support this affordable housing project. But I thought it made sense tonight to add this as an agenda item so that we can formalize an ask of the Affordable Housing Trust. So I think it would make sense to get an update as to the status, and then we can have a conversation about how we formalize that ask and go back to the Affordable Housing Trust with a request.
Right.
I can give you a quick update. There's not much. So the RFP's out there. I think September 25th is the deadline for RFP responses. Sean, as you talk to the general and as you talk to other people, just keep in mind that that's the date that we have set for the RFP responses there. So it's just be aware of that. A number of groups, mostly housing nonprofits, have pulled the RFP and so have the RFP. As you know, we executed an extension of the purchase and sale agreement that allows us to defer purchasing the property until, I believe, mid-December. That every month costs us more money, costs the town more money to be able to get that extension, but we decided it was worthwhile and important to have that extension. And so in that vein, I appreciate you raising this issue because I do think it's important to have clarity about the commitment of the Affordable Housing Trust, because I think that there was a lot of the conversation here previously. And I'll just be honest, I believe there was a widely held expectation, but we'll find that out shortly, that the Affordable Housing Trust was going to contribute $300,000 towards this project, which is, again, I think an incredible use of their money because it's 10,000. If we're doing 30 units, it subsidizes only 10,000 per unit, which is amazing. So that $300,000 is going to create a lot of units. But I think before we were to close and do things, we've always worked on a math that is purchase price minus to understand what the town proper actual commitment will be to this project. And that number has included historically 300,000 from the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yeah. So I'm just curious from the board as to, we've had informal discussions and we've gone through this process over the last, 6-9 months.
Right.
So if it's the will of the board, I would want to take a vote to formalize that request of the Affordable Housing Trust to fund $300,000 on the acquisition of the property. So my question, Peter, is if it's pencils down on September 25th, might we be able to close theoretically here by the end of October or the end of November?
No,
So it's the,
no, fair question. So
what's the timeline?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a crooked line from here to there. And so let me a couple of things. And the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust has rightly pointed this out before, which is the important thing is the commitment of funding. We actually probably don't want it to be coming in at acquisition. There's reasons for that. So but the point is the commitment of the funding. When it comes in, I'm less concerned about where we sit today, and there's conversations that we can have about that. The reason we negotiated to December, mid-December, was to give us an opportunity to make sure we were at a point where we had a agreement with whoever the RFP respondent that we chose was, and made sure that they had a chance to complete their due diligence, and we're comfortable with the due diligence that they did in the property. And so the hope is to get that done by the mid-December date, so that by the time we are taking down the property, we have a hard agreement, if you will, and deposit from a housing nonprofit or whoever the RFP respondent is, so that we're not taking down the project. Let's try again, take two, so that we are not acquiring the property before we know that we have a partner who has completed their due diligence and we have a binding agreement with them.
Got it. So we're still confident that this can happen before. Well, it has to happen before December.
As confident as we were previously, we are still that confident.
You're still that confident. Okay.
Yes, I will agree to that.
Okay. So as for a motion to formalize the request of the Affordable Housing Trust for the $300,000, do you have a motion?
So I think it's.
I have a question too. So if we don't know what the bids are coming in, we don't really know what we're gonna need. Why would we ask for just 300 right now? Why wouldn't we just wait a little bit, because maybe we want 400?
It's a good question. I thought from previous discussions we had talked about the potential for the Affordable Housing Trust to contribute the 300,000 number was floated out there. But I mean, what if we needed 450? Or what if we needed 500? I think the important thing is that those funds are allocated and set aside by the Affordable Housing Trust to contribute to this veterans project. I think that's the most important thing, is those funds are available.
I would agree with that.
And ready. And to Peter's point, it's $10,000 a unit at 30 units. It's $7,500 a unit at 40 units. So, somewhere in that ballpark, it's a good subsidy for this particular project. And I know that from previous conversations, there's a lot of support. I mean, this is what the Affordable Housing Trust does. And this is what they were set up to do, was to support these types of projects. So, maybe we can go at it as a minimum of
a commitment of a minimum of 300,000 with the potential.
Had the discussions around that number, but if there was a Affordable Housing Trust windfall and they came and they wanted to fund additional, then I don't think anybody's going to turn it away.
Yeah, so I'm going to, so I think asking for a minimum is fine. I'm going to tell you that I would be perfectly fine with 300. My motivation tonight is just to be really honest, is that there's a lot of conversation about how they're using their funds, and they're looking to use up to $300,000 to create 2 units somewhere else. And the way I said that probably discloses that I'm confused by that math. But if the trust wants to do that, that's great. But I just want to make sure if they're going to spend 300 on 2 units, that the other 300 they have is coming over here. And so to be clear, I'm just concerned. I want that expectation to be clear, and I want it to be so that we're not at a brink when we all of a sudden get responses and they're saying the 300,000 is not coming into the project. We're sitting there now saying, well, now what do we do on that? And I just want clarity. And again, it's their funds. They get to decide how they want their funds. I just want clarity from them as their commitment. So that way, when we're getting those responses, we immediately know. We are issuing, just so you know, answers to questions through the RFP process. Pete Kane has been working with town council to answer questions that have come in. And we will be providing some information also about the purchase and sale agreement and the purchase price. Obviously, we're having a public conversation now. So if someone's listening to us right now, they're hearing us talk about Affordable Housing Trust. That's expected to be buying down the purchase price. Doesn't mean the money comes in at this point, but details. It's buying down the purchase price. It's not seen as a subsidy, a source, if you will, for the development. It's a source for the land. And so I just think it's important to just make sure we just don't have mixed wires and mixed expectations. So I'm fine with the minimum language, but I also am totally fine with that's all. If they had $1 billion and they just wanted to do that, I think that's a healthy commitment. There are other sources. We kind of made the decision based on 300, so I would still be comfortable going forward on that.
Yeah, and we put this on the agenda, but at the request of the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, so that they actually had a formal request.
Right, they need a formal request.
They need a
from
formal
us
request.
before
So,
they can do anything.
yeah, so they'll take this up at their next meeting, and Doug is the is not only the liaison but a voting member, so he can certainly share this with Kim. But I don't think there's anything that we're saying tonight that differs from our position 3 or 4 months ago or 6 months ago.
Right.
Certainly.
Yeah, I have had experience over the last month or two about the level of scrutiny that the Affordable Housing Trust brings to bear for requests. So I don't know if a simple request of $300,000 without further details will be sufficient. Just as a heads up. Maybe that will be sufficient, but there may be further interest in understanding the full project finances as well. So I just kind of give a heads up to the select board that may be the case. But I do not think that there's any issues whatsoever with $300,000, even if another project happens to move forward and that be a very different project, money coming out and then back in again. It's a really different animal, but even if that happens, there's no issue with $300,000 from the pure bank account cash flow perspective. But I just want to also raise the fact that.
Well, I also want to raise the fact that, you know, there have been funds from the Affordable Housing Trust that have been promised to the Elm Place development as well. Potential for funds to be encumbered, with a project on Hillside Ave, and then this project. So I don't believe that there are funds to do everything. Are there?
Yeah.
It depends on the timing of everything.
There's also
Yes.
funds coming in.
So anyway, nothing I'm saying here is to dissuade us from voting for a $300,000 commitment there. My only note there was that there might be a desire for more information.
Yeah, no, the good news is this is truly a down the middle of the fairway affordable housing tax credit deal. Yep. So Kim is going to be intuitively, and some of your other members are going to be intuitively aware of the finances and the typical stacking of sources and uses. We're not going to know all the finances because we won't have. Yeah, we don't have. But we know whatever's submitted to us is going to be balanced. But the good news is we're not proposing any special AMIs. We're anticipating it's going to be a tax credit deal, which basically means that we're going to see, I think, mostly 60% and then some 30% units, as opposed to, I know on this other project, you guys are doing a little bit more organically, right? And that's good. It's creative.
That's a nice word for it.
It's creative. Organic is one of my neutral words that I use.
That's the word.
It's like saying it's colorful. It doesn't say it's bad color, good color. It just says it's colorful, right? So anyways, but I'm happy to join a conversation, but Kim and Joan and others know the math intuitively. But happy to. So with that, I just make a motion just to request, give the chair the authority to, on behalf of the select board, just to ask the Affordable Housing Trust for written confirmation of contributing at least $300,000 towards the acquisition of the Pine Street property. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The key word there was acquisition, as opposed to vertical development.
Yeah. You. All right, we'll move on to discussion of the select board handbook, policies, procedures, and regulations. This was,
Which one is it, select board or?
yeah,
the
we're
code of
gonna
conduct?
start with the select board handbook. You know, just for a matter of reference, this is a relatively new document that was taken into, that was voted upon by the select board in April of 22. And big thank you to the former chair, Holly Titcomb, for working on this for a number of years and seeing this through. So really just want to open this up for any questions. I have none. I've signed this. I stand behind it. I think it's an important tool to help guide this select board and future select boards. I think it's it's certainly not a static document. It's something that is dynamic and should be reviewed from time to time for changes to make sure that there are certainly things that change as we do, and the document should change along with it.
So I am going to practice when I'm preaching, and I ask the town administrator to take a look always at processes going forward after they've happened. And I know we've lived in this for a little while, so there's probably some things that are were intended, but maybe haven't come to fruition, or maybe haven't fleshed out enough in the processes. Like in chapter 2 under procedures, there's a section above B that requires that new select board members obtain a list of key town officials, their phone numbers, the phone number of each board member, and an organizational chart of town staff and officials. I never received any of those documents. So maybe assigning it to somebody might be helpful. That way,
That would be me.
okay.
Yeah.
But maybe in the handbook saying whose responsibility it is, so that when I'm looking at the handbook, I can say, okay, it's the responsibility of so-and-so, I'll reach out to them. Might be helpful. Also, with regards to the agenda, in section C.
Hold on, what chapter is
Chapter
that?
3, section C.
Can I just ask who's doing the markup of this? I just want to make sure someone's being responsible for that.
Guessing me.
Okay, no, that's all right. I just wanted to
Wait,
make sure we got there
chapter
before we got to the end of this.
Chapter 3, section C, agendas.
Yep.
So it says, generally, the chair should honor any request of the board member. If the question is denied, however, the member can call for a vote. There is no really formalization of what a request is or how it gets denied. So is an email enough for a request? How many emails equal a denial? Just thinking something along those lines to understand just if it's supposed to be an accountability, what is it actually holding people accountable to?
So I think as though in that, I think it's intended, look at it, a member can bring, the remedy is for a member to seek a vote of the board, so they can raise it, and if they ask for a vote of the board, that has to show up on our agenda. Meaning if they're saying, hey, I asked David I wanted to talk about pink, the color pink for
Yeah.
like 6 meetings, and he hasn't put it on the agenda, I can say, fine, I want to have it go to a vote.
Yeah.
Then he has to put it there. I don't want to get tripped. I'm suggesting we not get tripped up with, did you send enough emails? Did you send during the right hours? Did you sign the email? Any kind of technical things, because it's not intended to be
Okay, I
technical.
just think it's a little bit, puts people in a little bit less awkward of a situation if there's more clarity on the expectations. So that way, it's not catching anybody off guard, or like it's a little bit more procedural. Then I totally understand what you're saying. Like it doesn't have to be down to the wire, what minute of every day you have to send it, but just even if it's just by example, a request can be in A, B, and C form. A denial of a request should be written within, I don't know, a month of the request, whatever the appropriate time is. To have it hanging out there, it feels like
So having,
I shared that.
I'm gonna give you my experience as a chair, and I'm privy to, I think, David's experience a little bit here. The number of requests you get are great, and
Sure.
they're sporadic and they're all over the place. And if I had to track dates and times to know when I need to respond as chair, the reality is this: the chair balances so much in making an agenda, and ignoring a request. And that's not really ignoring, not being immediately responsive to request or affirmative to request doesn't mean that that's not someday going to show itself. It's just that too many things on an agenda, or there's a strategic or other reason, whether it's personnel or legal or otherwise things. And so I just want to make sure the chair doesn't then all of a sudden have to get on these tripwires because no one's keeping
That's
track
fair.
of this. Just in truth, no one's keeping track of these things like in that way. Just
Right.
just
I think that's fair, but then does that non-conversation act as a denial inadvertently to a person?
so I think a denial can be whenever, I guess my point is denial can be whenever someone wants to deem it to be denied.
Okay.
With the second you feel like you're being denied, you can say, hey, I want on the next agenda, I would like a vote on whether or not to include an agenda item. And then that tells the chair, okay, well, you better respond to me now or else it's going to go for a vote. And the chair can say, great, well, it can go for a vote because I'm not putting it on the agenda. And that definitely tells the chair privately. But I think, so maybe there's something that at the request of any member, it has to be put on for a vote to put something on the agenda. That vote has to be automatically put on the agenda.
Okay.
So that's what has to go into there.
Yeah.
That if
So maybe that's just the way
Maybe that
to.
Or it has to be a request.
Right.
You need to make a request to put it on the agenda, and the chair can't deny the request to put it on the agenda for a vote.
That it is whether or not it should be on the agenda.
Yes.
I guess
Not the topic,
I
but
guess
whether
it
the
has to be a
topic.
carve out though for like, unless like legally there's a bar to have it on the agenda.
Yeah, well, and
Like, obviously, I mean, that's intuitive. but I
yeah,
just
so
wanna
let's
say-
just see if we can come up with some
Yeah,
language that carves that out. I don't think that's a huge issue.
I do think that responds well to the situation. That's the request to have the topic discussed to potentially be talked about. It has to go on the agenda. So
Yeah,
that
and
provides the avenue instead of feeling disruptive if you,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the sense that no answer isn't a denial necessarily, right? And so that I just want to sort of flush that understanding out a little bit, but I think we just did that. In section E of the same section,
Chapter 3.
and chapter 3, yep, notions. Curious why the chair may not second a motion. I think that I did a tiny bit of research on this, and generally that's true in cases where the body's much larger. And like the second of a motion implies just that the motion should come before the board, not necessarily that the motion has merit. Whereas maybe when you're creating the motion, you're suggesting merit, the second it's not necessarily doing that. So I was just thinking about that.
I think we got hung up a couple times with not being able to second the
Second motion because of
We did get some.
Yeah.
It's when you get down to 4 members that it actually cripples the board.
Well,
Right.
well, also, there had been, I thought there was some language that talked about three-member boards, but I think that's on a.
No, that's in the board
That's
committee.
in the board committees, but I do think that if we're meeting, the chair should
Well,
be.
but
August, I don't think is the time when we vote on annual water and sewer rates. 'Cause we didn't do it now and we did it before, and so I think that's a different timing for that. Is it to the town administrator review timing? Is that reasonable in the midst of what happens in May and June, that's really going to happen in June?
No, I don't think that's a great time. May and June.
So let's maybe just to your point, let's have a separate, there's specific things you want to talk, debating all these.
Yeah.
Some 2 of you should get together and maybe work with Sean on making sure the calendar is what it should be.
Okay, because I redid the whole calendar.
So there you go.
Maybe
She did it in 2 weeks.
calendar.
She
And
did it in
then
2 weeks too. Like that, like she had a hell of a 2 weeks.
41 days in the year now.
No, I did the last one.
Oh, right. We only meet 41 days a year.
Yeah, so. okay.
Really?
I wish.
Okay, so those are the 2 in particular on the calendar, and then also the quarterly reports.
Yep.
That's not happening. And I'm not sure it really needs to
We
happen
did have.
at
we
that
have
level
had
of frequency.
quarterly reports.
So I'm going to make a suggestion on that one specifically, that literally quarterly reports of all 3 of those things seems excessive to me.
I disagree.
Okay, that's fine. But we ain't doing it, that's for sure.
We have had several quarterly reports, but we have fallen off on our quarterlies. So I think we just have to step it up and, you know, we could get the quarterlies emailed to us and then be ready for questions so that we can minimize the amount of time.
Well, Sean was sending, you had been sending us monthlies.
No, we haven't.
monthly.
Yeah, we haven't gotten it for a
I
while.
know.
Let's just leave it
So-
at, let's just leave it. We haven't gotten it in a while.
My
That's
finance
fine.
team will make it happen.
But I agree with Mary Ellen that these are, even if we're not talking about them, at this point with Munis and other things, it's easy to pump these out. We're not asking them to invent
This says
something.
the select board shall review the following in open session on a quarterly basis every year.
We can do that though.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's something
we
I
have done it.
frankly.
It historically has been done.
Mhm.
You ruined it apparently when you were right. I don't know how. You clearly thrown us off.
Yeah. Okay. What else? I'm going to 6. Does anyone have anything else in 4 or 5?
I have other things, but I'm just listening to you.
Your mind? Okay. All right. 6, Climate Action Plan Committee is not listed here, but I think that's because it's also not, it's not in the charter per se yet, which is going to be one of our suggestions for the charter, and that's why it's not here, right?
Is it a standing committee?
I believe it is.
Advisory committee.
The recommendation certainly is going to be that
Well,
that is a standing.
So the
committee.
reason it's not here is I don't think it existed at the time that we originally approved the handbook.
Correct.
So that's why it's not here, but
Yeah.
so can go in one of the two of these.
And it's not in the charter yet.
But it doesn't,
Doesn't have
you don't
to.
need, very few committees are actually in the charter. So just so you know that, like,
Okay, but this says the following boards committees are in the charter.
no, by statute, town charter or town general, I mean, they're,
Okay.
it's in any one of those things
Okay.
opposed to the charter. The charter actually is not nearly, for example, all these advisory committees don't exist in the charter.
Right, that's a separate section here.
But
Yeah.
just to give you
Yeah.
your
So the upshot of that is we can put it in now, or that's a different conversation about where it goes.
well, we have a general bylaw, don't we have to, is it created as a result of a bylaw or just a warrant article?
I think it was just a vote of the select board last year that created that.
We created that?
We didn't create that at town meeting?
Okay, so we'll figure it out. Figure it out. Staff will figure it out.
The advisory committees, again, I think what we say here is great, but I don't think we're actually doing it in terms of the oversight and monitoring and clear kind of instruction to the advisory committees about what their role is, what they're supposed to be reporting back on, that type of thing. I think we've kind of had that conversation in other contexts before.
Again, I don't know what you're doing with your committees, but my committees know exactly what I'm just. I don't even know what committees are mine.
We're the comedian for tonight, huh? So follow up there. And 10.
Wait, we'll just go back to, so what are you saying with the advisory committees? You're just saying
Nothing. He's saying that we're not following the handbook.
we're not following the
Well,
handbook.
that's nothing. but-
Well, I mean, he wasn't proposing a change. He
Right.
was critiquing our
Performance.
conformity
Right.
with the handbook.
Yes. Just noting it. I was critiquing it. You're right.
Noting it loudly and publicly.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, I mean, if we're going to put it down here
I'm
and
just-
so, and 10A4. This again is I think an opportunity, a good idea. This is like a regular committee reports to the select board. And
Mhm.
4,
Right,
basically kind of rotation of the committees coming before the select board and giving updates. I think
What language would it change?
I don't want to change it.
Oh,
I'm actually, we might want to suggest a change, but actually this is telling us that that's what's supposed to happen. But I don't think that's necessarily happening.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I
Okay.
think as things are coming up, I mean, we did invite, the Affordable Housing Trust tonight. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to attend. ERAC, Historic Commission's been here.
We can do better.
I got
Let's talk
Fine,
about the
but I mean,
changes to the board.
you know, we're signing this book and then, you know, it says at least annually, we're going to invite each one of the committees. Is that really what we want?
But it's what you want, and I think that's what you're saying, and I appreciate that, but give.
No,
understand that
I'm
you're-
sorry if I'm
you're-
not being clear about this one. I do think I think in general, this is a good idea, but right now this is saying every single one.
So
every
let's,
year.
let's just change it then.
To what?
Every other year? No.
Just to say that there'll be an update. I mean, because does it mean that a committee has to come in? Because I give an update constantly on the committees.
Yeah.
And, you know, a committee that I think that needs to come in and update, I ask them, like, for example, we're gonna have our solid waste advisory committee come in, but I've got
That's not what this is saying. Second paragraph.
right.
No.
Committee will present an
she knows-
update of
she
activities,
just-
goals and
She
actions.
understands what it says. I think she's just trying to offer that there's already an alternative to this happening through the liaisons.
Yeah, so why don't we, could we strike?
That is what
could we-
she's trying to
So
say.
could we strike paragraph 2?
I'm fine striking
Liaisons?
it.
Well, we
The
can-
second
Is that
paragraph,
okay with you, Doug?
not the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, so we can add the liaison language.
The liaison language is
The
there.
liaison language is there.
Right,
First one.
Chapter
Yeah.
10A4, second paragraph, is that correct?
Yes.
So there will no longer be an annual commitment of them to come in. They will come in as they deem it necessary.
Or update.
Or at the
provided-
The
invitation.
liaison will deem it.
provided by the liaison.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes.
And I'm going to apologize in advance for this one, because I know this can be a sticky wicket, but I find 10B to be, I totally understand the intent of it, but I think the level of constriction here, frankly, creates a kind of massive logjam through Sean. And I'll just say through the town administrator. And I think there needs to be some way to kind of finesse this so that the town administrator is aware of what is happening. People can't go willy-nilly, but the way this is set up right now, I just feel like you're basically just going to end up being a traffic cop. You know, so
Yeah,
I think there's
So let me, so I have a suggestion on that
Please.
because I hear you. I think the assistant town administrator should be saying town administrator or assistant town administrators. Because that's why you have assistants, right? To be honest with you, is to include them. I don't think that it should be anything more than that because I do think it is,
I'll take that.
to me, so I personally was just saying, look, you have a couple of town administrators and they'll decide if they're not comfortable saying, hey, Doug, that's no problem. They'll say, hey, I got to get back to you and they'll go to you. But
Yeah, sure.
but in fairness, right? I do think there's legitimacy to that, but I think we can't make changes that even come close to undermining just the chain of command in town hall.
Understood.
And so that's, the rigidity here was intended actually to deal with that, I think. And I support that completely as much as I like all of us at times run afoul.
Yeah.
So
I absolutely want every member of this board to feel like if you need information, if you are working to help support this town, that you get the support you need. We need your help. We need you to help the town with so many important projects. We're a small town. We have to work together as a team. It's just important that we do it through a chain of command. Ultimately, you know, I'm the fiduciary. I have to be responsible for all the contracts, all of the work that the staff are engaged in, and we have to do it in an orderly way. I think, you know, even the department heads, I think we can find a way to ensure that it's not a log jam. I think the assistant town administrators can help us expedite any requests you may have and just keep everybody working as a team.
So I have a comment on this. I do believe in keeping order, but I also believe that trying to really control a conversation is a problem. If I see the DPW director outside in a field and I want to ask him a question about something, I don't think I should have to turn around and send an email and say, or call and say, hey, can I ask this question?
can you give an example? Just help me flesh it out with an example for me.
One example would be our DPW director is working in the field and turns around and waves hi, and I go over and ask him, is there a possibility that weeping willow trees could be a good conduit here for sucking up some of the water that's flowing into all these people's basement in here? Is that something that could, you know, we could ever look at in the future? What would be another question? Another question would be if I wanted to call the chief, the fire chief, and ask the fire chief, are there any ways to offer programs for citizens who still have very old-fashioned type of electricity in their house? Can we have a program where they can re-up their electrical system or make things a little bit easier? I think that asking a select board member, you can't have a conversation. I think it's too much.
So I appreciate you giving the examples. And so I guess in my experience, and it took me a while to realize this, is what you ask and what they hear are not necessarily the same thing, which is there's an inherent hierarchy in play here. They recognize the politics. They recognize that someone's up here and control, can be in control, and they're down here in the subordinate ranks. And you may ask about willow trees, but the concern is that the DPW director then hears that as saying, well, Mary Ellen Fletcher wants me to plant willow trees, and so I should now do willow trees. Or Mary Ellen Fletcher wants me to now come up with a whole new program to help people with fuses convert to circuit breakers. And you might or might not mean that, but staff oftentimes hears even questions as directives. And that, unfortunately, then the way my experience is that they don't then go back and say, hey, Sean, Mary Ellen just told me or that I'm going to do willow tree, so I'm going to do it. He day to day uses his discretion and tries to be responsive to you, because there's not a single email from staff. I mean, for example, today, I think we saw an email that you had sent Marzi asking for information, which was a great email, totally appropriate for you to do that. That was great. But Marzi's like, yep, I'll get it to you immediately as soon as I'm out of this meeting. And you said, oh, well, you don't need to rush. But staff's always going to say,
anything I emailed Marzi, I copied Sean on.
No. I'm saying it was a great email. No, I'm saying
that's in the rule book.
No. I'm saying it's a great email. My point was more about you saw the urgency of her response, meaning she was uber responsive. And Marzi's that way anyway. So I'm using that example here. And so I just ask you to think about, it's not how you intend the conversation, it's how it's received.
Yeah.
And what happens is Sean, the town administrator, needs to understand that if all of a sudden brain matter is going to be spent researching water absorption with willow trees or circuit breaker programs, that takes away from what he understands his team to be working on. Sean absolutely needs to be aware of that. And so that's why the conversation needs to include, if not be through, Sean to do that. In my opinion, it's just that, because I don't think staff hears it the same way. When I would love to think, I always tell Pete Kane in particular, I've known him probably the longest of almost any staff here. I always tell Pete, no, Pete, really tell me what you think. Right. And I to this day, I think Pete is really nice to me. He left, and he would speak up right now, because he knows I always ask him, like, you have to tell me, like, if this is a stupid idea, tell me this is a stupid idea. But Pete doesn't. Pete is incredibly diligent and respectful. And so he doesn't. He, through Sean or somewhat, it comes back to me eventually. So I just ask you to think about it that way, because I hear what you're saying. It's not intended to it's not intended to be that way, but our role isn't running the town at all. Our role is by majority rule only, if you will. That's where we set policy. If it's not a majority policy, it's not a policy. And we shouldn't, I think it's concerned about tapping the resources of the town or distracting from what the town administrator has set as the course. We should judge the town administrator. If you go to the town administrator and say, don't weeping willows help with some of that, and planting those here, wouldn't that be a good idea? And the town administrator or his assistants constantly ignore you on that, then we have a process for that, which is we do reviews, and he has a contract, and then that's a personnel issue. So that we have our protocols there. And so I've said enough, but that's just, and
I think the charter is very clear on what the town administrator does and what the select board members do. And I don't see any reason, for saying Pleasant Street is a stride, except on extraordinary circumstances, select board and its individual members should only communicate with town staff. I just think that there's no reason for that, to be honest with you.
So what would the language say?
Take it out completely.
And so then,
I think the charter is very clear.
So, but if the charter is really clear, I mean, be careful on this. I think there have been examples by members of this board, myself included in times past, if the charter's that clear, that if that sentence is taken away, then I'm not exactly sure what the handbook does then. Because the handbook.
Talking about the whole handbook, or we just?
No, I'm talking about this provision then on this point for the handbook, which is this is, and town administrator should ultimately speak on this, but this is, to me, I guess from my perspective, if I was town administrator, it's not about controlling conversations, it's about controlling resources and knowing where things are going and what's happening here. If I show up after a 2-week vacation, I find out that the DPW director just spent 2 weeks researching willow trees, I frankly would be pissed. And I'm using the example. I'm just using the example just because you said.
Really getting.
No. But I would be because Kings Beach, that report needed to go out. Something else had to go out. And again, Gino is incredibly.
But that would be asking. But now what you're saying though is a select board member is making a request to do some work, and that's in the charter. That's clear. It's not your.
But I think that all I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that you're asking. I'm suggesting that human nature is that subordinates in a hyper political system don't hear questions necessarily the way you intend them. They hear them as, this is a good idea. I think you should do it, more often than not. And I think it's in this town. I think it's in other towns. It's all good intentioned. Mm-hmm. But keep in mind, this is also a hyper political environment where all of a sudden things show up on Facebook and things like that. They are aware of the environment here, and so they want to be responsive, whether they agree with you or not. They want to respond because they don't want Mary Ellen Fletcher to be unhappy with them, and they don't want Peter Spelios to be unhappy with them. And I'm saying this truly from my experience because they don't say no to me. You know what I mean? Like, they're so respectful, and I ask a question. I'm afraid I've come to learn that they sometimes infer that I've said, this is a great idea, go do it. So I'm just. We've heard each other. I appreciate your position. Disagree with it just because I wouldn't want to be a town administrator in an environment where, first of all, I don't think I want to be a town administrator.
So look, here's what I just want to share. I've been a town manager, city administrator. Inevitably, there's a conflict in every one of the organizations where people are getting mixed signals and they're getting misdirection. And the language here is intended to ensure that we have a clear chain of command, and there's not confusion about whether or not one or two board members that may have a different idea than other board members are providing direction for staff to do certain things that may be at odds with some of the policy goals. And again, the language here is to ensure that we have that esprit de corps. It's also to make sure that we're just focused as a team on clear priorities. I do get a number of staff that come up after select board members meet with them or ask to meet with them. And I'm surprised at times, and I don't want to be surprised. I want to know what you need. I want to know when my staff are being pulled into certain meetings so that I can actually have a good idea about what their level of demands are and really understand how we're going to help address all the other priorities that we have. It's just helpful for me. I don't want to say no to them. I certainly don't want you not to say hello to staff. I want you to have. Well,
the pleasantries are okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to them about the willow trees, but they do want to be helpful, and there are times where we just don't have the resources, and I've had to say no, and I've had to kind of go back and say, look, we've got to talk about our financial priorities. Or at the end of a fiscal year, we just can't address every issue that everybody wants to get resolved. And again, it just is helpful.
I don't think there are select board members here that are asking for finances to me, the charter is very clear. We don't ask for it. A select board member doesn't ask for our finance. They don't go to a department head and say, can you do this or can you do that? Without the protocol is to go to you first. And to say, for example, Sean can, I drive the bus and take the seniors over to this thing, and there is a protocol.
Since I opened this can of worms, I apologize even before I did it. Can I try to close it down just with can we make it such that a request can be made to, you can determine what level of staff, if it's just the assistant town administrator or whatever it is, in a written form, the CC to you, without every single thing being, Sean, may I talk to
Absolutely,
Marcy?
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Again, the system town administrator is a great way to deal with a lot of these things. I don't think, Sean, you have never made it be that way. Like we've never treated it that way. It's actually been about, and I appreciate you talking about the charter, but the charter's not self-affecting, meaning self-enforcing. So I appreciate you saying that's the charter, but if all of a sudden I go in and I'm starting to, run the clerk's office and say, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be doing that. The handbook is intended to give us something to hold each other accountable. The charter, yeah, we could say that, but no, the charter says you can't do that. I'll be like, okay.
Yeah.
The charter said I can't do that. What are you going to do about it, right? The handbook was intended to create self-accountability amongst us and boards to each other to do it. So that's why I think I hear you. You're right. The charter is really clear, but I think there is ample examples of people inadvertently, good faith, intention, whatnot, just, and sometimes not, maybe, doing things that run afoul of the charter. The handbook's the attempt to, especially in this category, because staff is a really tough one. We all want to banter. We all see them. We all do those things. And it's hard for me, after 9 years of working with people that, I run afoul of it. So I'm not just going to sit here with purity of heart and mind here. But I think maybe doing what Doug's saying is saying, whatever, whether it's Sean or the town administrator, like just make sure.
So it can be communicated to staff too. You may have had a conversation because you show up at some event, you're chatting with the chief here, the chief there. You're not just going to talk about your kids for the whole time. You're just going to be relative to the thing you want to talk about. Nothing's an edict to do something unless it's put in writing with at least a CC to you, just so everyone understands the ground rules, but it increases the flow. You still know exactly what's happening, but it increases the flow. We could try that.
Yeah, Doug, I'm happy to give that a try. I always just like the fact that if you're communicating with department heads and you have a few questions you want answered, just copying me, keeping me in the loop, I can read it. I can kind of figure out, is that something I have to lean in on, or is that something that really is innocuous and really just a request for some information or some level of support. Generally, I want you to feel supported. I really do. And equally, I want my department heads to feel supported. I want
no issue with that whatsoever.
Sense of teamwork to really permeate. They are busy though, and they have come to me and they have expressed concern that they are feeling pulled in directions where they're getting a lot of requests for time. I know new elected officials require a lot of time. I know that, and I'm not begrudging that, but we just have to be mindful when we have a list of priorities that everybody's going to be, looking for clarity of how they spend it.
So can you suggest, Sean, if I ask, can you suggest language then, if you were to revise it in a way that was acceptable to you objectively as a town administrator, using your experience, but kind of knowing that this would outlive, right? This is a document, and come back and suggest tweaks to this?
Absolutely.
Is that fine to do it that way?
Yep. Thank you.
You done?
I am done. That was
You're up, Mary Ellen.
All right, so I just recommend on chapter 2 and in any chapter that we have a Mass General Law to also print out the Mass General Law and keep it in the packet. Under section 3, board meetings.
Can I just say, I'm going to disagree with you on that. This day and age with Google, you can Google in a second and you're going to get the current version of it.
Okay.
If we have to do it, that means staff every year is going to have to go in and say, were there any changes to this law, and then print it out again? And how would people, I hear what you're saying, but with Google, it's so easy now to pull up a law as opposed to needing.
Yeah. If you hyperlink it, it's going to go right to the updated version of Mass General Law.
It is, except if we then have to keep hyperlinks updated. I'm just being realistic about our ability to keep things updated.
You wouldn't have to update the hyperlink if
But if the link was no longer good, if the link isn't updated, if we couldn't verify the link being the right, I'm just
a .ma.org link that if
it would get updated automatically.
Yes.
It could potentially break, but yeah.
Or you could just type in MGL chapter 30A section 21 and you're going to find out that it's the open meeting law.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on here a little bit. We got agenda 1C. Katie already took care of that. Timing and delivery. Town administrator's office by noon, at least 7 days prior to scheduled meeting.
Where's,
the-
where you at?
Number three, C3,
3C?
CD,
C.
agendas.
Oh,
chapter
okay, got
three,
it.
Three. It talks about 7 days prior to scheduled meeting, having the agenda. Do we want to remove that? Because,
Well, again, it's to the extent feasible. I think that is an ideal goal.
Okay.
I mean, to credit David, David's done a better job than I think I ever did, for sure. But I know, and that's a constant concern for you, Mary Ellen, and it's a good concern, but I think to set the expectation, that would be great, to be honest with you.
all right, so I'm good with the extent feasible. I just, on the next sentence, at least 3 business days prior to a scheduled meeting, we get things sometimes the same day, and I'm done. The fact, I'm not, get me some stuff on Thursday, Friday, but Monday, Tuesday, I can't look at this stuff. So I think get us stuff by Thursday night.
Yeah, I will echo. I know I've already said this, but it is extremely difficult for me during the day. I'm enjoying log on to my select board email, print out whatever it is that is changed for a meeting that I have to leave work and directly come to. I want to come prepared with all the information possible. So I know that this is meant to prevent that from happening. So that's why it's there, and that's great. But to pull a Doug if it's not happening.
So
Right, so what anybody want to do with it? Because 3 business days is your Thursday, not the night before, based on our Wednesday meetings. I'm just saying, the language does what you want. I understand that there are times where we don't get our packages in time.
This isn't.
I'm just asking if there's
Call for adherence.
And I was asking if there's a change, or you're just saying, let's do it, let's be better.
let's be better. We go over to G. Under G1, I think I have a question.
G1 citizen participation, you mean?
Yeah, generally board set aside comment time. With the new state law, don't we have to remove this? Request residents speak respectfully and refrain.
Yeah, we should just have council look at
Yeah, I think
this just generally, because the case law came down on this.
Yeah.
We should affirmatively say residents don't have to be respectful or show any modicum of courtesy. We actually should put that way, just so people have to read that and say, oh my God, it's incredible. You do not need to be nice. You can be a total jerk.
Let's not encourage it. All right, sorry.
Law is law.
So on the next page, under L minutes. Aye.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to 5 minutes. I'd like to see minutes ready by the next meeting. Board must vote to approve minutes of every meeting in a timely manner. Yeah, so I just like to see the next meeting. I definitely don't want to see, or within 30 days.
So I think that matches the open meeting law language
Mhm.
is where it was drawn from. And not to create a different standard here, just because the open meeting law doesn't say it, but I think in practice, everybody agrees with you. And I think Diane's done a really good job with that for us comparatively.
You're right, open meeting law does say 30 days.
Yeah, it says in a timely fashion, but within.
Right. Okay. I redid the calendar. Oh. So down here, the goal setting, I wanted to adjust the goal setting to comply with the town administrator's contract, not to, the town administrator has a contract, and in the contract, it actually says when the evaluation should be. So I just think that's how it should be set up. How it lines up with the town administrator's contract.
So you're going to submit your updated calendar just to
And then
make sure Diane and Sean know what to come the way, updated calendar and this goal setting language.
Yep.
You'll submit.
Yeah, to echo Mary Ellen, there are a couple of mentions of the calendar in the subsections, not just the calendar, like when we talk about the town administrator's review. So if you change the calendar, just make sure we're changing those.
Right.
Subsections.
I got that here. Under chapter 6, board and committee appointments. I think the way that we are selecting our committees really needs to be improved on. And I don't have that updated, and I will come back with my recommendations on updating. But, the fact that we are not, we're getting we're getting presented with one name, and we haven't even seen any resumes. We have no ideas. I don't feel like we're really participating in it enough, and yet these are people that we need to rely on to get information back. So I think we've got to really tweak that. The only thing I could say is I will come back with some more, be a little bit clearer on how I think it should be tweeted.
I would ask you as you do it just to keep, and I'm sure you will, a sensitivity to the fact that bringing 3 names forward for a committee and getting stuck in a public dialogue about whether or not Bob, Sue, or Amy are better qualified is something that would deter people from even applying because they're like, no, thank you. I'm offering my services. I don't want to be part of this open meeting law BS type of thing. And so I think that's, in a way, this is, so I just want to be
I just want to find a different process. And I also, what really concerns me significantly is we have committees that are out there that they're just doing what they want to do, and there's very little direction from us. And a committee that I think has direction from us, the Solid Waste Committee, I still think that they need a little bit more direction. I think what we need to do is have more conversations amongst ourselves. What is it we're looking for, and what do we need for this coming year? And then get that information to the committees so that they can, start studying things.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to think. I have to think about that. I hear you. Right. When we created the Solid Waste Advisory, there was a charge, but frankly, the Solid Waste Advisory is coming back and talking about things that I would have never guessed them to talk about. But that's because they're thinking about it. We're not thinking about it, and they want to come back and now talk to us about things that we didn't originally think about, and I like. So, for example, I'm going to use Harbor. Harbor is working, talking, doing what they're doing. The goal here was have them come to us and talk to us about what they think based on their conversations, their expertise, what we need to be doing for the Harbor, because we ain't thinking about that regularly because we have 16 other things that we are thinking about. So I hear you. I just want to, it's a two-way thing, which is I want them to have the free and the autonomy to say, hey, open space is thinking about things that I would have never thought of. Right. So
I don't want to see advisory committees out there applying for grants and doing all different things and having conversations with different elected officials, and we don't even know anything about it. If it's an advisory committee, then let's have some advice here and let's have some conversations.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree. I think if people are on a committee, it's advisory, meaning they're advising policy to us and doing stuff. But I think, again, any resident has the right to go call up their legislator and say, I want to do this. And the grant stuff, again, I believe town staff can handle that and work with them on those type of things. These are things I think we really do have to have a conversation. I think we have to have a conversation about, whether we agree or not. I'm going to give you an example of solid waste. Solid waste might be going in different directions, and some of the real clear things that we need to do is reduce our solid waste, and we might, as a select board, say, listen, select board, solid waste committee, could you give us recommendations on how we're actually going to reduce this, and this? Yeah.
Along with whatever other recommendations you want to make, but we really need to make some serious issues. We need to really make a difference in what's happening here. For example, on the plastics.
Yeah.
Right. So I think we should have gone to solid waste earlier on the plastics. They're working on it right now. They're going to turn around and come back because they've been told, come back and give us the feedback on what you want for a bylaw.
Right. But solid waste has also done things that we haven't even thought to ask them. They've come to us and advised about things that and told us words that we didn't even know existed in the English language.
I think we can do both, though.
Right.
I think we can do both.
Okay, well, let's have the conversation. They are the power of government. Like, it's to us, like, we can harness the ship, so to speak, but we should not be controlling all the motors. I think it's great that they are working on things that I don't have an interest in.
Right.
I'm perfectly fine with it. It sounds awesome. I don't have an interest in it. It's never going to be a priority for me. But thank God we have all these citizens doing and not always just waiting to see if the select board is fine with it, because I don't care if the select board's fine with it, as long as it's consistent with bylaw.
That's not what I'm saying.
And Marianne, to your point, like about the grant thing, I think that's again an adherence to what we actually have written here. If I like, it is important for members of those committees to understand that while they're making recommendations, it is the select board that makes the ultimate decision. So I don't think that, you know, that type of thing, for example, shouldn't really happen.
No, but
that should be circulated back in a way.
But I don't think that means everything. I think that means that things that need to come to the select board have to come to the select board. That doesn't all of a sudden say anything you guys want to do as a committee, you don't have to come back to the select board on, because that's somewhat ludicrous for them to decide that they want to. I'm just going to use the solid waste committee. The solid waste committee has initiated a number of free initiatives in town and tried to do things and push things forward that we've never voted on here. So they shouldn't talk about them or do them without saying, hey, do you really think this recycling initiative is a good idea? It's costing the town nothing in recycling. I don't want them coming back here. My reading of that language was never intended to stifle anything and make everything they do come back to us. Only the stuff that we have authority over, they should have to come back to us for. So
the irony of this conversation might be that whatever you're trying to solve related to the town administrator, you might be recreating right now.
All right.
Like you are trying to remove the backlog from the town administrator and our conversations with staff, but by telling every committee they have to show up here and have a conversation with us, you might be doing that.
Well, we got rid of that part.
I know, but I'm saying you're creating it again here, except with boards and us.
No, I think what you're just doing is you're just trying to get some ideas on what the conversations are. What my biggest concern is when and I'm going to tell you right now, it's Harbor Advisory. When I turn around and I read an application for a grant out there, and I'm like, we don't even know about it.
But
we don't even know
talk
about
to your town administrator about that. That's not, so I'm just going to tell you about that. And I appreciate you being open about a committee that you've expressed concern about, right? I conversely am glad that they're out there doing stuff. If we as a select board or a town administrator need to sign off on things, but they're doing things and we're not signing off on them, and then that's a different question. But I'm grateful, and I'm 100% fine with it, especially when I don't agree with it, because that's the beauty of the committee structure, is that we have to multiply ourselves.
So in fairness, I just want to say I work with all the committees to my best ability. On Tuesday, I sent the chair of the Harbor and Waterfront Committee a grant program, $5 million that was awarded to a handful of Massachusetts oceanfront communities. And it's disappointing to me that Swampscott didn't have a grant application in there. And I had asked the committee to work and focus on that and discuss it, because frankly, we have a harbor and waterfront plan that this board actually approved in a prior edition. And that plan has been instrumental in helping the town move forward with a broader vision for the harbor and waterfront. We talked about that in front of town meeting. We talked about some of the goals, and we're working the plan, and we're going after grants that would help support some of those broader initiatives. That said, I'm happy to come back and have a few more conversations with the board about some of those programs and some of those initiatives. But that's the kind of synergy, and that's the teamwork, and that's the collaboration that this board and all of the other boards and the town employees are really focused on, that are helping us move forward with a lot of initiatives that were just not happening for generations.
I think that was one of the reasons why when we were at the chapel, I had made the request that we go to the committees and ask them what they feel like their mission is, like from their seat coming out, so that we can then understand, is there a disconnect in what these folks are tasked with doing and how they understand what they're doing? I mean, to make assumptions based on, I don't know that, I just think some more digging has to be done to understand it. If the boards understand the same mission we understand, who's correct there? The assumption isn't just that we're correct, right? We should be doing some digging and seeing what was the original charge, where is the direction they're going in? Is it a combination, a synergy of both the mission we may see and they may see?
And I respect, Sean, that you're saying that you work with all these committees, but I believe these are advisory committees to the select board. And so maybe you're aware of all of these things. And obviously, we don't want your town administrator's report to be 14 pages long. But maybe all this amounts to really is there's been one or two hiccups here in terms of communication about a thing or two that really does rise to the level of like, it would really be nice to know at least that this is happening. We don't have to have a vote on it or something. And maybe that's all we're really ultimately talking about here.
And I do, look, I do think there are times I could provide the board with a little bit more of a timely update on certain things that you would want to be aware of. And I'm certainly willing to go back and just try to figure out how to ensure that these committees are filtering up some information, or we're really just keeping those lines of communication open.
That's that again. We're liaisons. That falls to us. So that's again, Sean, I think that's great. But to your point, good point. We as liaisons then need to make sure we're setting clear with the expectation of the chair, saying, look, we can't go to all the meetings. We're not going to, right? But have a monthly check-in with the chair seems like a really reasonable thing with the committee we're liaisons to. Just tell them what's going on, right? Send me an email with what's going on or something. Mary Ellen does the best of obviously sharing updates on those things, but we all can do better on it. I just want to make sure from my standpoint, I'm concerned that anything we do differently now is about making sure that we agree with what these committees are advising. I want them to push our envelopes. I want to disagree with them. I want them to educate me. And that's how the system actually works. And they know that if it has to go through town meeting or something, it's to their benefit of working consensus and getting this board on involved. They're smart enough to recognize that. But I've actually come to really enjoy the fact that I have these people with expertise and knowledge about things. And at times I disagree with them, or it's, I'm not going to point out any committee, but I was like, oh, why are they possibly doing this? But hey, if they want to do it, they can do it. So I appreciate what you're saying. Maybe the liaisons just need to do a better job.
So I also want to I'll come back to in the future, I do want to add a couple of committees. One concern that I do have is with Pine Street. I would like to see a veterans committee or something so that we really have a group of people that are getting ready really to work hard to identify anybody that could benefit from that facility.
So how does that differ from the VFW or the American Legion or the DAV?
I think what you would have is, I think we had a veterans committee in the past. We had some type of veterans committee. That's what I've been told. I would just think you'd have a committee that would work with the veterans, those veterans agencies, and just you have more manpower, non-veterans that can possibly do additional work. I'll go back and research it a little bit. Especially with Pine Street, I want to make sure that, when we went into Michon, we had a very small percentage of Swampscott residents that moved in there in the first round. And the people that had organized Michon, the management company, I think did a good job of advertising. So I don't think there was a problem with advertising. But could we have done more to really shake the trees to find out were there senior citizens that qualified for that facility?
Yeah, and I think that's something that we can do through our veterans, through our VSO Mike Sweeney, and through the VFW auxiliary and the commander of the VFW. And those organizations, just one of my concerns is you have a finite group of very, very involved citizens, and
right.
and having them join a committee where they're already in the VFW and they're going to those meetings and they're already at the DAV going to those meetings. It's sort of the same group of people anyway. So maybe there's something that we can do that accomplishes that goal. But the point is taken, and I want as much as you do to make sure that we have that if we cast as wide a net as possible.
Right.
This particular project. Agree.
All right, and I've already made my statements clear on B. That's all I have for this. On B, 6B that Doug brought up. My willow trees.
That will be our code from now on.
Willow trees.
Willow trees.
Yeah.
If I see a willow tree planted anytime in the next year, I swear to God.
That'll be your memo. If anyone mentions willow trees.
They'll be weeping. About willow trees.
Order. Okay. We will move on to the board and committee
In case anybody's interested, I have no comments to that.
I don't either. You guys should hear.
I feel like
You
you
know.
heavily commented.
Yeah.
Well, I
You really write it, okay, so.
Saying you have no comments, but.
I want no changes except changes to your changes.
Let's see.
Well, I also have no other comments, in the other books.
I don't.
Oh, it's everybody. I'm sorry, I thought that's where we were going.
No, you're right.
I have a quick question. If a committee has a subcommittee of 3, what are the quorum rules? What are the rules around that?
Well, you can't answer it without knowing what the committee quorum is. So,
So if
if it's a 5-member committee and there's a subcommittee of 3, then you have a subcommittee issue. If you even a working group, doesn't matter at that point. You have a quorum issue.
It's too many.
You have an open
All
meeting law.
ballot?
Yeah, you have an open meeting
it
law.
does affect.
But if you have a committee of 7 and there's a group of, if there's a subcommittee, so this is where it matters. And I'm going to say enough to say that we probably should get more information, but I think even subcommittees of less than a quorum technically are open
Have to
meeting
follow
law.
open meeting law. Yeah, that I know.
Working groups or things of that nature are different. Yeah,
Right, so if I-
what they're called, I think matters to some degree. I just don't know what degree.
All right, let me just ask. If I have a committee of 7.
Yeah.
And I have a working group of 3. I don't have quorum.
You don't have a quorum to begin with. I'm not sure.
Right.
I think I don't.
Or-
We should ask town council. I don't want to.
Sean, I just want to find out how we can get committees to have, to be able to sit on the side and do work together with a few of them instead of having.
Yeah, well, the open meeting law shouldn't be an inhibitor, right? Collaboration for a few, and it does. It just freezes people. They just don't know what to do.
Right.
Even if you do the training, you don't know what to do. Training highlights it.
And seeing chapter 5G says with the exception of 3-member committees, the chair shall not second any motion. If we're adopting a change there, we should adopt the change here.
I have a couple of things.
Great.
For chapter 5D, the minutes, who is responsible for, who do they submit their minutes to get them? The clerk. Okay, does it say that in here anywhere? I didn't see it. They file with the town clerk's office, but does the clerk follow up if the minutes if the minutes have not been given for a certain period of time? Can we empower the clerk to do that, or was
He
there?
or she should be.
I think the liaison should be doing it because I do. I think the liaison should say, hey, you've got to turn in your minutes. I mean, if you're
Yes, you have to
the
turn
liaison,
your minutes,
committee-
but we can't be tracking. I'm just being honest about it. We're doing so much stuff and
Right.
I can't now be tracking some other committee's minutes.
But Jack's homework, I can't worry about. the
No, I'm just being
minutes,
serious. I think it's reasonable for the clerk to say, look, he was the one that posts the meeting, so he knows the meetings happen.
too. Right.
And so he's the one that should be able to follow up and and I think he does keep a list or should be keeping a list.
I understand. All I'm saying is it would be nice if committees had a safety net. It would be nice if the town clerk, I'm sure they already do this, so I apologize. It's just not written here. He or she reached out from time to time if there is a delinquency in minutes, just to know that the request has been made, not that he or she has to knock on doors and things, but just sort of
I
a,
want to see this.
This is an important thing. I mean, for
Yeah, I
people
mean,
to ultimately know what's
So
going on.
our town clerk is extraordinarily diligent.
I'm
and he
sure-
he's
Yeah.
spoken to me a number of
Yeah.
times about the number of voids that several of the committees have with their minutes. He said volunteer committees and they are obligated to put the minutes together. He's actually talked about, just going back and seeing if he could help support some of the committees that are really short-staffed and.
No, but this is where the liaisons then do provide a thing. Then to empower, you get a list or whatever from Jared or the
Right.
town clerk,
And
and then that's sent to us to say, hey, here's your committees, like for me to call a chair and say, hey, look, you haven't done minutes in 6 months that's a very fair thing for me to do once Jared,
Or even,
I can help do that.
can I see you and raise you just one on that, which is like, how about it monthly? I mean, would it be overly burdensome for the clerk or the assistant clerk at the end of each month to take an accounting inventory of like what minutes are outstanding and just send out an email at that point to the chair, the CC to the liaison, so that we have kind of good kind of housekeeping about keeping up with these things.
Yeah, but sometimes these meetings, you know, if you're talking about setting off a 30-day delinquency, I mean, that's what something like what a bank would do. But I think in practical
More complicated.
We're going to foreclose on that agenda.
No, but it's just, I know it doesn't necessarily always, maybe you had a meeting at the beginning of the month, the end of the
Doug, I
month,
think we can work on something. Let me
just something regular.
a regular cadence.
Maybe
Yeah.
the clerk has some suggestions. It sounds like he might. As to what he,
Yeah.
like, might be a best practice here. And we can just empower him or future clerks to just be checking up on that. Because I know a lot of folks are using minutes as a listening tool because they don't have availability to watch the meetings all the time, or they want to know if something has gone through or been voted on, and they go to look at it, and it can be helpful.
Absolutely.
So, also, I just want to make sure that the remote participation section complies with whatever you're required to do now based on if anything has
Yeah,
changed.
so we should just submit that to whether or not the updated law.
Because I do know, again, this has become a joke on Doug, sorry, but a Doug rule, that not every committee is still doing remote meetings. So it's not happening, but there's a requirement we should just.
Yeah, I would say, Liz, I mean, on that, and this, like, I've been thinking about this. I think us having an opinion on remote meetings is a fair thing for us to have. I think there's a fundamental difference between the zoning board. I'm just picking on the zoning, but they have in-person meetings. So, but I'm just saying there's a fundamental difference of them sitting in a room. You know, they're televised. I want them televised and stuff like that. But to have committees meet and not have them perpetually just sitting on Zoom in their living rooms. There's a couple of regulatory committees I think that are just on Zoom. And I just think that's fundamentally different when you're sitting in your room adjudicating something, or I frankly just think at some point we might want to look at it and say, hey, we understand during times, and there are times with public health and stuff like that, but being in the room and being with your fellow residents as you're listening to their thing or adjudicating their thing, and also helps committees create bonds and do stuff. So I just think at some point we might want to think about having an opinion about that.
Agreed.
I already have an opinion about it,
Yeah.
which I.
Well, maybe discussing
Oh,
it,
sorry.
it's not an agenda item, but like, yes,
Yeah.
I might
let's
as well.
have-
I might have already said it actually.
I feel like there's a real benefit to it, as you're
Yeah.
saying. And so we should.
Yep.
Because
The question right in.
that's in here. I think the request
By
says
carrier
made
pigeon.
publicly.
The carrier
so-
pigeon. Yes, so carrier pigeon.
Is that too big of a thing for us just to agree upon right now and include in this? Is that really such?
Well, what are we putting in?
Do you want me to have an opinion first? Is that what you're asking?
What do you mean? And we-
I mean,
you know,
I
we encourage you to have in-person meetings.
Encourage in-person.
would
That's all it says right now.
even-
Yeah, I don't, the word encourage is
Aggressive
not
than
an interesting word
encourage.
to me.
I think
They
it
should
should
be-
go,
They should be in person unless the good reason.
yeah,
Mandatory.
I mean, I just look at, we, before COVID, you
They
would
were
never
all
have
in
thought it. I
person.
mean, obviously the law didn't allow it, but there is a collaboration difference, very, huge difference. And I've sat recently on a regulatory one where it might still be going on.
Well, it does say at the beginning of remote participation, absent a public health crisis or justifiable cause, boards and committees should endeavor to hold their meetings in person.
Should
not
endeavor.
remote.
I feel like.
Should endeavor.
that-
Should endeavor is like a double subjunctive.
Yes,
It's like, who wrote this?
I,
Should endeavor. They should.
Get rid of endeavor, should hold,
yes,
should hold.
should hold their meeting in person.
Which goal is that?
F.
I think there should be
Yeah.
remote availability I think it should be recorded so people can watch it. And I think that it should be remote for folks who have mobility issues or can't get due to timing, can't get places. But I think there is something lost when everyone's behind a keyboard and their screen is black and it says Katie Phelan, and I don't have to look anybody in the eye or see what's happening around me.
Do we really have that?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes,
You do.
I think we do, for sure we do.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we do.
There's still a number of committees that are meeting and doing it that way.
The planning board meets remotely. Always.
And that's,
Not to call out any.
No, that's
single
always an particular
example.
meeting.
That's an example.
yeah, sure.
You want
I
to hang
just-
out with us tonight? Because he doesn't get meetings.
I'll use the PTO as an example. The PTO was fully remote for so long, and there is something lost. Parents want to be inside the school building. They want to see their PTO members. There's something there that is people are calling for. If I'm seeing it in that regard, I just feel like then we should be bringing it forward to other examples, which
Hands down.
would be boards and committees. And I think that
So we're going to delete Endeavor, but I think also at some point it would be good to have communication going out to committees to say,
Transition to.
just say
Not transitioning to in-person.
effective 6 months ago.
and thank you.
I just want to make sure that if somebody's can't make it to a meeting, that they, you still have somebody who can tap in, like we can keep people going to meetings. Otherwise, I think we could lose people too.
Well, I think there's a difference between one
That's somebody
member
who's
of the board
constantly
having a
working.
conflict and having to take a call from on a Zoom from somewhere, and the entire board being on Zoom.
Yeah.
Coming in. I think there's a distinction there.
Right.
So, you do your best to meet in person, and if it's, you don't meet if it's not on Zoom, well, maybe that's a conversation that needs to be had with that working committee, and we figure out what the solution is, but.
Yeah, for our board, we meet first and third Wednesdays of each month. We know that that's our time. If we're going to meet at 10 a.m. on a random Tuesday, well, then accommodations can be made. But your normal, regularly scheduled meeting should be in person. Cool. Right. Good stuff. Anything else?
You want mine?
Go ahead.
Well, I can go from chapter 3, maybe C, D, E, excessive absentees. Here, I think we did miss that.
With 3E.
E, 3, A, B, C, E, yep, 3E.
Quorum requirements.
Excessive.
Attendance.
Unforeseen certain members are expected to attend every excessive absenteeism may be cause for removal or non-reappointment. Don't we have a number if you missed 3?
I think you might be cross-pollinating the
Yeah.
charter
Charter.
with meeting members and not committee members. Technically, town meeting is if you miss 3 town meetings.
No, I'm not thinking about town meeting, even though I do know about town meeting. The excessive. So what are we doing when we have excessive absenteeism? What is the number? I mean,
I think we did have a conversation about this when we talked about committees at Andrews Chapel, but we floated around what the number should be, but I don't think we had landed on that number.
so if I'm a chairman of a committee and I've got somebody who's not coming, it's affecting my quorum, at what point am I able to pull the plug here? But meanwhile, I've got somebody who's like, no, I still want to be on the committee.
Yeah. So I don't know the answer. I'm comfortable with this language. We've never had it like materialize here. Removing people from committees is we should be extremely cautious and we should be extremely judicious with it. There is legal implications, but I think the more important than the legal implications, there's just to me a kind of a moral implication of.
One of the issues that we have is when people are signed up for the committee and they're not showing up and it's causing a problem with getting a quorum. That's a problem. And I think we really have to figure out, because we're holding up committees, we're making it harder and putting more of a burden to make sure everyone else on the committee is showing up. So.
Well, the chair should follow.
Yeah, I mean, I am not aware of anybody going through what this language isn't bringing to us.
Right.
So I can't.
So they should follow the procedure, right?
Right.
To bring it to us, the liaison.
All right. So just leave it as, not worry about a number. Okay.
Figure it out in that circumstance.
I hear you though.
The only reason I was
something
saying a
good.
number is because I don't want, one chairman who's a little bit more.
I just don't want it to be weaponized. That's all.
Yeah.
To be honest with you,
Well, yeah,
but also having a number could weaponize it. He missed 4, but I like him. You've missed 3, and 3 is the trigger, but I don't like you. I'm going to say, hey, I want you to go, right? And I just don't want that to be weaponized.
Right.
That's all.
Okay.
I want them to come to us and just go to the town administrator and say, hey, we have a real problem here. Could you call Bob? He's not responding to my phone calls. Town administrator,
Yeah,
Bob, and Bob
also
says,
the-
I don't care about this committee, I'm happy to resign, right? Or whatever.
Does put a burden on the chairs to determine what is excessive. To me,
Yeah.
it feels like, I hear what you're saying. The flip is that it gives them guidance and clarity, so there isn't kind of favoritism or whatever to say, three's the rule.
Yeah, but they have still to come to us though. It's like, so.
And
You do.
the chair has the best temperature for the committee, right? So I don't see it as a burden. I mean, if they meet twice a month, then two times might be a good number. If they meet once a month, one time might be a good number. If they meet if they meet every week, the cadence of the meetings could dictate the number. So giving a large number might actually mean you might not be at a committee for 6 months, because they only meet once a month. So I don't want to unnecessarily trap.
It's all about the efficacy of the committee and the members, and there's so many nuances. Attendance is just one of the, I think, elements of a good committee member. It's not all encompassing. I do think you have to be present on some level, but if you have a really high recent committee member that is almost on some level indispensable, but does have some life circumstances or some other things that need to be taken into account, I do think we have to be mindful that there are all sorts of unique situations. That said, we do have a number of committees that just at times just don't function well because they're missing, members. And we've got to just be able to dial in on those and ensure that we support them a little bit more with, individuals that want to serve. So we can spend a little bit more time thinking about how to do this.
Mary Ellen?
Are there more?
I'm good with that.
Do we have code of conduct?
I have a question. Consuming or using alcohol, non-prescribed narcotics, and controlled substance is prohibited while acting in official capacity. So if I go to that beer party this weekend, am I in official capacity?
No.
No. So make sure I'm not in official capacity.
Drinking beer right now? No, you'd be in official capacity right now. I think.
15 minutes.
Good thing.
Or we just continue sitting here.
Yeah, so. Anything else in the code of conduct? Very almost.
Can you just tell me under chapter 5, number B, refraining, there's one bullet point and one non-bullet point. Refraining from giving orders or directions to town administrator as an individual board/committee member. And the next one, it says refraining from providing information that concern public policy matters or issues that will be considered by the board or the board. I mean, there's just two different things in here. What are we doing there? I really don't understand what that means. You want to be?
Oh, I
Second
think,
one's
I
like-
think, I think that's kind of
Like secrets?
it's kind of like off the record stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, we're going to talk about the sign bylaw tomorrow. And I think Sean, blah, 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 whisper in Sean's ear something that you wouldn't otherwise be willing to share here. I think that's what it's, I'm saying I'm using the colloquial phrase.
No secret.
But I think it's,
That like,
Why is it blue?
I don't know why it's blue, but I object to the blueness of it. But I think that's what it's intended, which is don't have sidebars to encumber like an argument that you don't make an argument privately with Sean that you're not going to make.
I say Sean, I don't even know why I said Sean.
Oh, it is contempt.
Yeah, sorry, it's town administrator. That
did you
wouldn't
put
make
that in, Sean?
publicly.
I don't believe, I don't recall.
Where did you put it in blue?
Good answer.
No, I do think it's important that, you know, board members share information with each other equally, and it's gets back to making sure that I'm not put in the middle of, you know.
I think that's a better way of saying, that's a better way of saying what
I
I
don't
was saying.
want to be, you know, a dynamic where you're trying to build consensus and somehow, you know, the board's up in the air about something and I'm being pulled in as sort of a sixth member of a policy board where I'm here to help advise, guide, and support. I don't want to get in the middle of, you know, something that really you're going to have to figure out as a deliberative body.
Okay, so is that just an additional bullet?
Yeah, it should have been bulleted just.
All right, so it's just an additional bullet. Okay.
I think we can probably clarify it with some.
You probably don't need to.
What's that?
No,
I
no,
don't think you need to. I think you just need to give it a bullet. It's missing a bullet.
3C, social media communications. This is, beneficial to be there than anything that goes on social media reflects the town's home staff. And a lot of town officials or board members, or us, for example, may have like a select board page and then our own personal page. So is this meaning anything I say is?
That was the guide, the training that I went to. And people kind of, I don't know if you were listening at that point in time, you've probably heard this 9 times over, but that was the guidance, like, don't do it.
Guidance.
Like, MMA, basically, like, no one else knows the distinction between these things. You may think that you have this distinction between your campaign page and your personal page, but no one else sees it that way. And so anything you put out there, you got to assume that people are going to see it in your official capacity. That was their guidance. I don't know if that's a rule or whatever, but did I get that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like when you know, you show up and say, I'm speaking here as a private citizen. That doesn't fly. And, you know, there's all sorts of people that like to skirt the, you know, official responsibility. You know, you're an elected official and you get elected as a select citizen, the highest elected officer in the town, and you can't take the hat off. Like, you're representing the board always. And sometimes it's tough because your board may not have a majority of members that share your opinion. When you show up and say, I'm speaking as a private citizen tonight, I don't, like, you're undermining the integrity of the, you know, policy. You know, now look, it's a democracy. You have the right to have your opinion about certain things, but it becomes very, very complicated in terms of the, you know, public perception when you're taking a hat on and taking it off, and you're trying to avoid that level of accountability. You know, it's just important for you to understand it. It never really goes well, and I've seen this in every one of my positions. Board members trying to take that hat off and getting other board members upset because they misrepresent the position of the board and in a public meeting. Because some people will they just
Implicitly misrepresent, meaning that it's misconstrued that what the person's saying is on behalf of a big. Yeah, you can't disclaimer that away. Type of thing.
Yeah, it's tough. It's totally tough.
On the social media, let me ask you a question. So if I'm on a committee on social media and I want to make a comment about a select board member or another elected official, and I put something on social media that's a little bit, I don't want to say nasty, but, you know, something that's a little negative. Is that a
That's
problem?
not you. You're talking about someone on a committee, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about, yeah, I don't go on social media. So I'm talking about somebody on a committee. I'm talking about a situation, that's all.
Yeah.
That does not involve me. I'm just wondering, what is, like,
are you talking about, like, say something about an employee that might create a hostile work environment, or?
no, I'm talking about a person who's on a committee.
Committee member saying Peter Spelios is an asshole.
Yeah, Well, no,
fine.
not saying,
All right, well, I'm just saying that's perfectly fine. They have every right to do it.
Okay.
Yep. Just, I mean, I'm using that example just because I'm trying to keep it somewhat PG.
Oops.
As a matter of fact, I have a long book of people saying worse about me. So, but the answer is it's completely, I don't think there's anything in the code of conduct that can be, now, certainly when it comes up for reappointment, we decide that someone is not exercising good judgment or whatnot, is not representing the town, then that may be different.
okay.
Right? I'm sharing my view, like kind of where that line is. As someone who is probably as criticized as anybody on this board, anybody who does it's perfectly fine. They have every right to do it.
Except for us.
Don't go home and read Facebook tonight.
No, I don't.
I don't.
But it's all fair game,
Okay.
you know?
I just
But
I wanted to
we're
put that
saying
out
we
there.
hold ourselves to a different
Yeah, no,
standard.
we hold ourselves to a different standard about how we're
Right.
doing it, right? But her question was about a committee member or somebody.
Yeah, my question is about a community member.
Did you end up getting your question answered?
Oh, not really, but
What was your question again?
I don't know.
Well, you can't remember. You can't.
I just feel that, like, if I don't know, it's. I'll think on it some more because I don't want to go down this rabbit hole right now. I'll think about it.
I'm 42 on
No.
Wednesday. I good.
What are you saying?
You know, just go home and post Peter Spiller as an asshole.
No,
And see, and then we'll see the consequences of that. Then we'll test it.
like, I don't know. If I post a bunch of pictures of my kids in Sora, like, does that mean that I am in support of the police department and that's some sort of political undertone to it or something like that? Like, that's not what, like, there's such a line there of like what my personal social media might have and what that may be interpreted as, and I'm responsible for what I post and I understand that, and I know that that's what this is trying to get at, but you can like read so much into what people
That's interesting.
write behind, like, you know, sit behind their keyboards and decide that that's what that means. I mean, I'm not responsible for what people sit at home and think what they mean I say. I'm responsible for what I say, so.
You got your life and you know, people are gonna think what they're gonna think.
Yeah.
No, I think so. If you go through these bullets though, like, Katie, I think that example, I'm using that.
That's their official
Yeah.
page.
No, but I know, but we're kind of saying it's blended. Your answer to her is all blended anyway. So if you just apply the same rule to your official page to your private page, that doesn't run afoul. Like,
Yeah.
and again, I don't think the goal here is spirit more so than foot faults,
Yep,
right? Type
yep.
of things.
Like to be
No,
civil letter.
No, I hear you. I mean, I hear your question, but I wouldn't.
And I mean, I use social media quite often, and I unlike Mary Ellen, I am on social media in a personal capacity on multiple platforms of social media, and I don't hold myself.
I'm gonna step up my game.
Listen, you don't.
You should
please.
TikTok.
That's okay.
So I just want to be clear about what the intention is, and if the spirit of what the spirit is, rather than what folks might.
Yeah, I don't. You look at, I think there's a reasonableness. It's the reasonable man theory.
Yeah.
And on
you'll
these things,
never
or
forget
woman
this.
theory on those things. If you're dealing with an unreasonable person, then you don't need to write. Then you don't need to worry. If it's not a reasonable person, you don't need to worry because you're never going to figure it out. So
Like a couple
it's about good faith and doing the best we can.
Okay. Anything else on code of conduct?
So you'll bring this back when edits are ready. You ready for stuff. Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right. We'll
And
move
then
on.
is the commitment that this will become an annual review and every other year review? What
Let me know.
was it? Well, to be fair, like, I think that.
I don't think
to
it should be an
hold
every
ourselves-
year.
I don't,
I think, you know, I don't think it should be an every year though.
yeah, I don't think so either.
And so I think what I would say is do every 3 years because every select board member serves at least 3 years. And so make it every 3 years. That way, once during each of our terms, we would be reviewing it and commenting on it. But otherwise, you can't just come on board and all of a sudden say, well, I want to rewrite the rules type of things. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
That'd be my suggestion.
The regular cadence more so than we had. Yeah, there's it didn't. It's just came to allow us making stuff. There's no cadence. Yeah.
Let's set the cadence.
Edit the calendar, Mary Ellen. Okay, we'll move on to the 10th agenda, designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the board.
Select Board may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion at the request of any board member. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion.
I have one question on, two questions, actually two questions. One is on the one-day liquor license. I think we should amend that to add an additional rain date with the possibility of having bad weather. Is that something we should be doing here tonight? So you don't have to call another meeting?
Yeah, for Swamptoberfest.
I'm saying a third rain date.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
thank you.
Ted is behind us. And
Oh,
he has requested the
behind
the second rain date, which would be
Oh,
the
you
third
did?
date, be
9/22.
Friday, September 22nd.
9/22.
Yes.
Friday, September 22nd from
That is the secondary rain date,
What time do we?
4 to 8 p.m.
And how,
4
what
to
else,
8 on a Friday.
what else is going on in town, and
Last
do
option we have.
you need police details for this? I mean, has this been considered?
Police details are already, we're all set for this weekend.
No, I'm talking about 9/22.
We'll do the same process planning that we've done for this weekend on the 22nd. Just like we would do on the 8th if we needed to use this Sunday as the primary rain.
All right, but if you're looking at 9/22 and how many events are going on in town on 9/22?
It's a
Not-
Friday, so I'm gonna.
I don't think there's any.
There is a
Football?
football game at
Oh,
7
football.
p.m. Swampscott's hosting Winthrop at 7 p.m. Big game. Everyone should go to that
Do we use police?
at one point.
Do we?
Diane, aren't you from Winthrop?
Go Vikings.
All right.
They choose their dates, so it's no problem.
Okay. So I just think, so on that, we need to, make an amendment to add 9/22, 4 to 8 on that in case they need that. And I had a question about, can you just give me an update on the finances on this? People pay to go? And where does the money go?
I'm happy to answer
We have
that.
Mr. Dooley here.
Go ahead.
Yes. Yes, so the income from this, there's $5 per person as an entry fee with a max of $20 per family.
Mhm.
The beer sales are $10 for all of the different beverages that are being sold. There's also revenue from lake water. All of those proceeds are split 50-50 with the town.
The town and whom?
And the yacht club, Swampscott Yacht Club. And I believe there are other arrangements that that the rec department has with food vendors that I just don't know the details of. But I believe there may be some sort of split for revenue with that with the town as well.
Food vendors, you know.
Food vendors, yeah. And the rec department, right?
I'll speak to what you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can always speak to my.
I can get some more information. I know that we were trying to seed food trucks, and the first, couple of years we were just trying to get more of them there. So that's projects after a while, we create a raw, we can start charging.
All of the expenses for the event overall, including entertainment, kids equipment, et cetera, are split 50-50 with the Swampscott Yacht Club.
And Ted, do you guys have bands for the rain date set up in the event that we get to that 9/22 date?
We do have tentative bands for 9/22, and we have confirmations for this Sunday.
Got it.
If needed.
Thanks.
We're really hoping we don't have to use those rain dates.
Agree.
I don't think you need to.
All right, got a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, adding the September 22nd, Friday, September 22nd as a second rain date from 4 to 8 p.m.
I'll make the motion, but can I just ask going forward 2 things? Can we just, when you do the consent agenda, just give quick descriptions of the items on the consent agenda so people that aren't looking at the agenda, just vote to approve hawking and peddling license for doors installation, vote to approve 1-day liquor license for the Oktoberfest, vote for 1-day liquor license for a Reach Art event, and a vote to approve minutes from August 16th.
Sure.
So that would people. And the other thing, Diane, I would ask is, just while I'm thinking about it, we should have hard copies of the agenda available at all meetings for people to have when they come in here, please.
Yep.
I moved it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Select board's on.
But Hannah so eloquently mentioned during public comment about the microforest. We had a very detailed report come in about the lack in tree canopy. There is a weeding plan in place. I think I echo Hannah's sentiments that just because it's untidy doesn't mean it's not purposeful, and that we could work with the folks that we have who are very passionate about it to figure out a way that it serves its purpose and is also a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. But if it cannot be aesthetically pleasing and it still serves a greater purpose, then maybe it just becomes a smaller microforest, or it has more education regarding it. There's a plan for what it will look like in 5 years and 10 years, so people have managed expectations. I think for right now, it's like it got planted, and then some people are assuming that it is overgrown and that is not what it's meant to look like. It would be great if we know that was the plan, and or it is not the plan and this is why it's not the plan. One thing I do think that has to be handled is the sight line coming off the street.
On a Walker?
Yeah, it's terrible. I take that turn all the time, and now that the plantings are pretty high from the grow season, and we need to pull that back a little bit so that you can still see your left-hand sight line from Walker. I don't think that means we have to bulldoze it.
I agree. I would just ask, maybe someone from the Conservancy can meet with Gino. They can agree on how to bring back that line so that everybody's no one wakes up one morning and says, oh my God, I can't believe we just did that.
I just want to just put everybody at ease. We have heard a number of people complain about it. I have asked Gino to work with Suzanne Hale. He met with her this week, and we are gonna work something out to see if we can kind of balance some of the concerns. I get that, folks are a little frustrated. It doesn't look aesthetically as if it were, a beautiful little park. It does have an environmental purpose, and we want to see that, persevere.
I just want to express an opinion on that. The aesthetic thing is the least important thing for us to be addressing.
I know that.
Okay, so I don't want it, but I don't want to reinforce it as an important thing by all of a sudden saying we're going to make it smaller so that we can plant grass and make everybody feel good.
But I hear the public safety issue, and
again, that is different.
For me,
that is different.
And frankly, I hear you. Like, for me, the most important thing is the environmental, investment that we're making, and I do think it stands as a sharp contrast to all the other beautiful plantings that we have around town, and this can exist too. So
I want to represent the people that think that is just horrific looking. And that's exactly how they feel. And I think Sean's point of trying to find a balance or doing something there, I think I really support that. So.
But where do we, I hear you, but where do we stop? Because I know a number of people that really think it's disgusting how the fish house smells like fish. I'm being dead serious about that. The number of people that call and actually say, why do the bathrooms of the fish house smell like fish? When you walk up the stairs of the yacht club, they say it smells like fish. Like, okay, but that's the least offensive thing about it. If people were maintaining fish in an unsanitary way and we had fish guts flowing all over the place, well, that's a different thing. But this, I'm just, where do we grow that line? Are we
very hard to beautify the front of Monument, and we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on beautiful lights to put up and down Humphrey Street. I think when residents live in that area and they have to make that turn and they look at that constantly and they're upset about it, And I think that I don't want to be in a position of saying, hey, too bad, the fish house smells like fish and you got to suck it up. I think that if Sean can find a balance, let's just see if we can do this.
No, you didn't say balance.
Dan Hale is the architect.
Education and understanding that there is beauty in
what some people find as ugly sometimes, right? And so you have to educate folks to understand, okay, maybe at the end of the day, they still think it's ugly, but they understand its purpose. And so they're more tolerant of it. So part of this is educating what the microforest is meant to look like. Is it meant to look like as it does today? I think you would find people to say, no, there is definitely weeding that has to be done. And I mean, I think that that's reasonable, but then managing expectations of what it's meant to look like in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now. So we're not getting 5 years from now and people saying, well, that's a terrible look too, because there's a lot of time and energy and thought going into these processes. And if we're just saying after 2 years, pull them up because they don't fit an aesthetic, then don't let them do it in the first place, because they've wasted all that time and energy trying to do something, change something, create something, assist the environment, fix the tree canopy problem, all these things that are purposeful in a bunch of other areas of community other than aesthetic. So I agree, the balance, but also educating that there's a purpose to it.
And safety.
And safety. Obviously, safety is number one, and it's a terrible sight line and it needs to be fixed. But
So are we fixing the fish smell or not? I missed that. Just joking. I got you. I hear you. Huh?
We'll get you some Febreze, Peter.
We're gonna schedule our next meeting down there, Peter, and we're gonna
That will fix me.
figure this out.
That will fix my problem. I got it.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
All in favor?
I
Aye. Thank you.
We might be up
Great night.
next one.
save the trees.